Good evening. We'll now call the City Council regular meeting to order for February 11, 2019, 6 p.m. Please rise for the invocation and pledge of allegiance. Invocation be given by Pastor Bill Martin of Bethany Baptist.
Let's pray together now. And our Father, we do come before your presence this evening with grateful hearts, thanking you, Lord, for what has been a wonderful weekend, a good day in church yesterday, and a good day today, a good way to start our work week. And Lord, we thank you tonight for salvation and grace that comes to us through the Lord Jesus Christ. I pray that you would always use us to be purveyors of the gospel, to be ready to have an answer with those who ask of the hope that abides within our hearts, how we have peace and joy in our lives through grace and Christ Jesus our Lord. Lord, we thank you for the institution of government that you've given us to provide order in our lives, and I pray tonight for your blessing upon our meeting. I pray that you would give the council members here discretion and wisdom and judgment as they move through the orders of the agenda. Lord, I pray that everything that takes place here tonight would be done decently and in order, and that ultimately the Lord Jesus Christ would have glory and preeminence in all that we do, because it's in Christ's name that we pray tonight. Amen.
Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. You may be seated. Thank you, Pastor Martin. Madam Clerk, if you'll please call the roll.
Councilwoman Gray is absent. Councilman Spurlock.
Here.
Councilwoman Sutherland.
Here.
Deputy Mayor Barnard.
Here.
Mayor Anderson.
Here.
Quorum is present.
All right, first up under the consent agenda, have the approval of the minutes from January 28, 2019 regular council meeting. We're looking for a motion.
Motion to approve the minutes from January 28th, 2019.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any questions? Seeing none, we'll call the roll.
Councilman Spurlock.
Yes.
Councilwoman Sutherland.
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Barnard.
Yes.
Mayor Anderson.
Yes.
Motion passed.
Next up, we have the approval of the resolution 19-01, authorizing execution of a maintenance agreement. Be looking for a motion. You have to read the resolution in? We'll read it.
Resolution of the City of Avon Park, Highlands County, Florida, authorizing the execution of maintenance agreement with the Florida Department of Transportation and providing an effective date.
Be looking for a motion.
I make a motion we approve resolution 19-01, authorizing execution of the maintenance agreement under consent agenda B5.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any questions?
I just had one question. I don't know if you can answer it. Is this
Okay.
the same amount of money that we got in the prior maintenance agreement?
Yes.
Okay.
Is there any further questions? Seeing none, we'll call the roll.
Councilman Spurlock.
Yes.
Councilman Sutherland.
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Barnard.
Yes.
Mayor Anderson.
Yes.
Motion passed.
Item number 6, we have the approval of the FDOT Memorandum of Agreement Contract number BE 705.
Actually, that's what you just approved.
No,
Okay.
that was the resolution.
That was the resolution. This
Yep.
is-
Got
This is
it.
the agreement attached to it.
Is there any questions on the agreement?
Nope.
Seeing none, moving along. Staff updates. Brickell Building update.
Yes, I am pleased to announce that I had a meeting with a mold specialist and building contractor last week that went very well. We were in the building for a couple of hours. The upstairs area is not bad at all because there's no drywall upstairs. It's all open stud. There's some truss damage that can be easily shored up. The good news is it's already been re-roofed. The leak that we had on the side of the building has already been taken care of. The problem that we're having with the building is the drywall that's downstairs is what is containing the mold. And the humidity level that we checked it at that particular day in January was in the high 70s. It's not supposed to be that high, especially in January. The higher the humidity, the more the mold grows. And as it's being contained inside the drywall, it's not going to get better. So he suggested that we immediately just start removing the drywall, and ventilate the building, let some of that just get out. We made an agreement with the prisoners. They are coming in tomorrow morning. They have been fit tested with the apparatus, the breathing apparatus. They have been checked out by a doctor both before and after this event will take place, just to make sure that everything's done above board with that. We're giving them respirators. Robert purchased 6 fans? 4 fans, which are floor fans, not drum fans. It'll be just circulating air along the bottom of the floor there while the guys are doing the work inside there. And I think we're going to have 5 or 6 inmates that are going to be working inside the building. We have purchased the respirators, the Tyvek suits for them, everything just to make sure that it's all taken care of. So bottom line is we've already got a 20-yard dumpster sitting there getting ready to put the stuff in it. We're going to start swinging hammers and taking drywall out tomorrow.
Awesome.
And then we'll bring the machines in, the air scrubber machines for the, I think it's called negative ionization, that basically just makes sure that the building is clear at that point. So hopefully here within a couple of weeks, we'll have all that done, cleaned up, and I'll be able to report to you that there's no contaminants in the building or
Excellent.
presumed fungal growth.
Excellent. Has there been any further movement with the insurance?
Not yet.
All right.
They got their letter and everything at this point?
The insurance company?
Mm-hmm.
No, it's sitting right there where it was 2 weeks ago. We've been playing phone tag. Me and the adjuster.
Okay.
Yeah, we'll get it worked out.
Dave, you said there was some work upstairs that needs to be done to shore it up. Who's going to do that work?
Some basic carpentry work. We'll get that figured out once we get the mold out of the building and we can work in a little bit safer environment.
Okay.
My primary concern was get the safety aspect of it done first with the air quality issues. Once that's done, then we can start looking at some of the repair work that needs to be done.
Well, thank you for getting this far, this quick. Thank you.
Glad to do it.
Any other questions on the Brickell building?
I'm waiting for Stanley to ask a question. I'm just wondering, it's been a big deal for him at this council for many.
The only question I have is this something we're doing in-house, or are we paying anybody else? Do we pay the other guy 10%?
No, haven't paid anybody
Good.
anything. Just what we pay with the inmate contract.
We're not talking about the generator, Stanley.
No.
Oh, and speaking of generator, I'm glad you brought that up.
Oh, great.
We don't have a power service connected into that building right now, so we're going to be using a portable generator in the back parking lot to run the fans on the inside until Robert can figure out how to put a temporary service in there, plug the fans in at that point.
Okay.
Any of this cleanup won't affect the businesses next door?
I have already spoken to the young lady at Southern Charm. I went and talked to her today to let her know what was going on. She seemed to be very happy with that, and I think that's really the only business that it would impact, being that close to it. I don't think the rest of them are going to lose anything except the 2 parking spots there for right now.
Anything else? All right. Appreciate it, David. Moving on to the landfill cost analysis.
Okay. As you are aware, in 2014, a decision was made by the city council based on the recommendation of then city manager to start moving our landfill waste instead of using our county to take it to Okeechobee County. He convinced the city council that it was a cost savings measure. But what I found out in this, and I'll go through this sheet that I've got here. The original analysis that created the April 2014 agreement stipulated the following. Added mileage for using Okeechobee was 90 miles extra per round trip. It's actually 94 miles. Garbage trucks get 7 miles to a gallon. It was not calculated as to whether that was empty or full. I think if it was a full truck, it would be a lot less than 7 miles per gallon. 8 trips per week was the original stipulation. It's actually 14 trips per week that we're going to Okeechobee, often 3 times a day, which assumes 67,160 miles extra every year on our garbage truck. It was originally stipulated that Okeechobee was only $20 per ton. It's been $25 a ton since the contract was written. It's originally stated that no overtime would be needed. See my overtime chart below. So if you go right to that, in 2013, the overtime expenditures, this was not the budget, this was the actual expenditures, was $21.89 in that year. In 2014, the year we started that agreement, it jumped to $43.63. Following year was $54.04. Following year was $82.70. Following year was $22,484. 2018 was $28,330 in actual overtime expenses. As of last week, so far in the 2019 budget year, we spent $7,015, which, if you'll look at it, that's a whole lot more than what we did the first year before we actually started doing this.
Yeah.
The sanitation maintenance expenditures by year, this is only the garbage trucks. 66,000 was 280 in 2013 was kind of the baseline that I used for this. 2014, the year we started this in April, it jumped up to 71,842. 2015 was 93,533. 2016, 132,802. 2017, 102,195. 2018, 136,789. So far this year, $43,824 has been spent on garbage truck maintenance. The total tipping charges at the Okeechobee landfill since we started this in April of 2014 is $700,275. If you divide that by $25 a ton, you come to 29,000 tons that we've taken there so far. 29,000 tons times the $20 difference in tipping fees for Okeechobee versus our county is $580,000 presumed savings over 5 years. Now, if you take that $580,000 number and take the overtime out of it and the maintenance cost, which what I did to come to those figures was I took the first year, 2013, out of each one of those figures and added that up. That's how I came to that conclusion. So it's $316,333 presumed total savings, not including the replacement of 2 garbage trucks, which we've already bought 2. 2 trucks we've had to buy. One of them because it was wrecked.
One
Right.
thing here too is also, but we're making 2 trips now where we're only doing 1 in the past, correct?
Sometimes 3 times a day. That's what's killing our overtime. That's
No, I'm talking
what's-
about, we're picking up garbage twice a week, aren't we? To where it was only once on this beforehand?
Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay.
So even picking up garbage twice a week, that just exacerbates more wear and tear and
Right,
everything
right.
else. So, I
Right.
mean, if we were only picking up once a week, then I don't know what those numbers would have been, had we kept with the original contract.
Now,
What's
we
the,
did have a contract with the Okeechobee landfill that expired 2 years ago, and I can't find that it was ever renewed. And I don't think they cared, as long as we were bringing stuff to
Yeah.
them, the meter was running, so I don't think they cared. But,
I understand a lot of times also that the employees that would drive there would sit in their truck for hours in
Yes,
line, so.
yes. Now, what Robert told me
Yes, correct.
also last week was that a couple of weeks ago, I told you we had a transmission went out on one of our trucks. So we stopped at that point going to Okeechobee and went to the Highlands County landfill in an emergency situation. We've used no overtime since then. Correct, Robert?
Very little overtime.
Okay. So I am asking, since this was council approval back in 2014, I am asking for permission to stop doing that and start using the Highlands County landfill.
I think that's a no-brainer for me.
Yep. Do we need a motion for that?
It
And-
was,
and
it
what's-
was council action.
Just to be sure, that the ton and tipping fees per ton is $20 or 25 with the county?
They charge 25 a ton, so it's a $20 difference between us and them.
And they take tires as well? There won't be any separate issue with tires?
Highlands County does take tires, but it is a separate charge for that. Okeechobee is charging us $25 a ton. Highlands County is charging us $45 a ton.
So do we have any estimate what it would be with the county? Will we still have to haul that same amount of garbage? Because we went from having recycle once a week and garbage once a week to now garbage practically twice a week. So, I mean, I'm okay with going to the county if it ends up being the same amount of money, but I just want to make sure that what we're doing with the county is actually a huge cost savings. If it's $45 a ton, I mean, that's,
Well, it's a little bit complicated because whenever we were doing the recycling with all of the chargebacks, or however you call that, where the loads got sent back to
Yep.
us, it'd be kind of hard to figure that out exactly.
Well, what we're looking at is also the wear and tear on the trucks and the money we're having to spend on keeping these trucks on the road.
And I think
It
also it
is
shows a
a
lot of
big
good faith
expense.
with the county. I do believe that. I think
Mhm.
that, economies of scale and all, I don't know, are they set in their $45 per ton at this point? Is that a set fee that they have, or is there
Yes,
something?
that's a set fee they charge everybody. It doesn't matter if you're a municipality or just somebody off the street, everybody gets charged the same amount of money. They will not budge off of that.
Which was part of the reason that they took it to Okeechobee, because they wouldn't negotiate a lower price back then.
Well, I remember the Okeechobee one, I think there was a savings of about $28,000, and that was it. That was the original pretext. That's how much money we were gonna save, $28,000.
Mhm.
And I think that that's just moving on.
A lot of time we're spending down there on the road and stuff.
Yeah, and I mean, if that's the overtime, that's not budgeted dollars either, your overtime, is it? Or are you
Yes,
pulling from
yes,
other
but
accounts?
we've only got like $15,000 a year budgeted for overtime. And the driver going over there 3 times a day, it's like a 12-hour day for him, 3 trips.
So in terms of the actual time spent in the truck with one of those drivers, if they had only gone, let's just say to the county, do you know the time frame of that, what that would be?
It's an hour and a half round trip to go to the county.
To the county, and Okeechobee, it's an
It's
8-hour trip?
It's a 4-hour trip,
Okay, back and forth.
yes. Round trip, 4 hours. to
Okay,
Okeechobee.
so hour and a half versus 4 hours.
Yeah.
So what other duties do the garbage drivers do when they're done driving? I mean, are they gonna be able to go around town and pick up more stuff and do other cleanup, or how does that work?
No, we're gonna move Joe to the clam truck, possibly, as soon as we get the new clam truck in. He will still continue driving trucks back and forth, but he'll have other duties like cleaning the trucks when he comes back. He can wash them out, wash the trucks down.
But it'll really free them up, I guess is what I'm getting at.
Oh, yes, it's gonna free him up to do a lot more than what he's been doing, just driving.
So that's what, about 25 hours a week practically?
Yeah. Somewhere around there. Because right now I know he's working 5 days a week and he's putting anywhere from 10 to 12 hours a day, every day.
You have one guy that drives the truck?
One guy that drives the truck back and forth.
Just as a runner.
The driver in town, he drives the truck, they fill it up, they take it back to Public Works, park it. Joe picks it up and he takes it to Okeechobee and he brings it back. But, and in that trip, he's also going by the fuel island. He'll fuel it up, have it ready to go. So when they need it, it's a truck sitting there ready to go.
Okay.
We'll be looking for a motion.
Well, since this contract has been canceled for 2 years, there's no motion to cancel the contract. All we have to say is
No,
just,
we just need.
Well, the
give it-
direction was that they do that, so I think it's, even though it's not a contract, to go ahead and give them direction the opposite way. Because it is a form of procurement, and I prefer that you stick with the program with regard to approving all procurements of that size.
okay, then one other question in regards to the budget. Was any of this factored into the current fiscal year in terms of the expenses that were projected by you, or what?
It wasn't, this current budget was not projected by me.
No, I'm just saying, are the numbers that you came up with projected in this current budget?
I say no, due to our budget was not accurate.
So knowing that, there will be some budget adjustments to be made, either shortening something or extending something else.
I'm sure there will be some budget.
I'd be
adjustments.
curious to see if the last 3 years have the same exact numbers in it, to see whether or not anyone actually tweaked it and see whether or not they actually cared. That's an easy, if you give me the line item, I can look it up
We
online.
can do that research for you.
Or the account number, that's pretty easy as well.
Okay, we'll be looking for a motion.
I guess the motion would be that we discontinue traveling back and forth to Okeechobee with our garbage trucks and allow the city manager the allowability to figure out with the department to take the garbage to the county landfill.
Okay, we have a motion. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any further questions? Seeing none, we'll call the roll.
Councilman Spurlock,
Yes.
Councilwoman Sutherland,
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Barnard,
Yes.
Mayor Anderson.
Yes.
Motion passed.
Thank you, council members.
Thank you. Next up, under attorney updates, Boys and Girls Club lease.
So you have before you the Boys and Girls Club lease hasn't changed since you all got a copy of it last month. Very, very similar to the Boys and Girls Club or the Avon Park Youth Football, which I think did change with regard to the name. But if you've had a chance to review it, if you have any questions, I'll stand for any questions you have.
I just have one question. There was an event there this Saturday, and it was a little bit fuzzy with the individual that had the event. It was the Heartland Lions, who, by the way, they provided their 501c3 and their insurance, from what I understand. And I think the event went really well. I got a text from Ms. Diaz, and she said that it went really well without a hitch. They were very grateful for all of the things that the city was able to do. But there seems to be some equipment that I don't know if it belongs to the city or if it belongs to Avon Park Football, but it had to do with the box that has the score. You know, there's this little black box that you enter the score and it relays it to the big, the big scoreboard. And it was nowhere to be found. I don't know who owns that. And my question would be, I don't want to keep buying more and more equipment. I think it's incumbent on these organizations to provide their own when it comes to the games like that. But there's no inventory of equipment, and it made the game less a game because they didn't have a scoreboard. There just wasn't one. But yet the infrastructure is there.
I get that.
So I don't know if there's going to be I don't know who's in charge of the equipment, I guess. It was locked up in somewhere where the city doesn't have access, and no one has access to it. But if it belongs to the city, then it needs to be somewhere that the city can store it or have a key for its access.
Dave, have you seen anything such as that?
No, sir.
Okay.
No, sir. I can find that out for you with either a phone call tomorrow.
Yeah, I actually spoke to Willis. I got in touch with him. He was really busy on Saturday, so I mean, it wasn't coordinated well, and I'll put that back on Adrian Diaz, and she and I spoke about it. She had let everyone know that there was going to be an event on Saturday, but she really didn't coordinate all of the stuff, the details, and didn't know that there wasn't an ice machine in there. So, I mean, they made do with what they had, and they still had a good event. I just want to make sure that the next one that they have that's on a calendar, that they have all the stuff that they need, just like any other organization that wants to use it. But we just need to get an ice machine in there and just have a little bit more on board with us. I think it was a good move to have the event. Otherwise, it would have had to cancel it, and it would have been a big letdown for a lot of people.
Well, while we're talking about that, I do have a question, because when she called Friday afternoon.
Yeah, are we talking about the Boys and Girls Club?
Well, it has to
still
do,
here?
yeah, I mean, it does, because it's regarding the equipment. If they're going to be the purveyors of, yes, you can do this event, and here's the equipment, then they need to know whether or not they're responsible for equipment to be provided to the users of the field, or whether the city is, and that's nowhere in the contract.
Now, as I mentioned before, the details between the cooperation between Avon Park City Youth Football and the Boys and Girls Club has got to be fairly close. And then bringing in the Heartland Lions, they're going to have to cooperate with the other two, which I think are the primaries, and because they have buildings that they're actually leasing, the other two, and Heartland Lions is just getting a license to use the field in cooperation with the others. So I mean, can we tighten it up? Sure. I mean, if somebody says we need to make this way, then I can put that in there. But I was hoping that there would be mostly them cooperating with each other, since they're very short-term leases, and we have the option if it's not working out to start all over again. But I think the leases are good, and will work. It's just they're going to have to cooperate.
Yeah, there's
in
a
that
lot of
regard.
tweaking to be done. I was going to ask Robert, do you know who turned on the lights for the event on Saturday?
Yes, I gave the keys to Todd Williams, one of my employees, to turn them on
Okay.
and turn them back off.
And I think that
Okay.
the agreements do call for that. Okay, that the city will handle that so long as they're given enough time.
Well, I just
And
didn't want the issue to be where the employees were taking direction from anyone else, that they should have their written out duties that were specific, because the employees are making decisions on behalf of these organizations that, they weren't totally all there because a lot of people were unaware of the equipment and whatnot.
Just with regard to the lights.
Well, the
Simply
lights,
because
the keys.
the lights have to be turned on in a certain way, otherwise they can damage them.
Right. But nonetheless, there's also the keys and making sure that everyone is able to get in and out. The striping of the field was another one. There's just a lot of tweaking to be done, and I think a lot of exercises have to be hashed out before that's a nicely streamlined process.
The striping the field was just, right now, it's just only agreed to with regard to Avon Park City Youth Football.
Okay.
The Heartland Lions asked whether we would stripe the field, whether we would provide the paint for the striping. They do the striping, actually, is the way it reads.
And I think they ended up striping it themselves on Saturday, did they
Yeah,
not?
we provided the paint
So,
Okay.
and the machine.
so that's not in their lease, but she asked that question. I said, that's something you have to bring up with the council.
Well, here's the thing. In Sebring, she pays $450 to use a field.
Mhm.
In Avon Park, if we are providing the paint and everything else for this one organization, then we're going to be providing everything for everyone else as well.
Well, we already are with regard to Boys and Girls Club and Avon Park City Youth Football, but not with regard to the Heartland Lions yet, because she asked the question, and I said, no, it's not in there, because I was not directed to do that. And it wasn't something that she brought up and asked for originally, so I didn't put it in the agreement. But I said, all she has to do is ask, and maybe you would allow it, and maybe you wouldn't, but that's not something I can do unilaterally.
And I know we're going off on tangents here because it's still part of the same
Well,
contract.
they're all related, they're all interrelated.
Yeah,
really.
I know, but what does it cost to stripe the field, just out of curiosity, with time? Because I know that if we have employees that are union, there's a mandatory 2-hour pay.
Well, we don't stripe the field for anybody. We pay for
No,
this.
we don't stripe it.
I thought you said you just striped it.
No,
We
provide the
supplied the
paint.
paint
Okay,
and the
you
machine
supplied
for
it.
them to stripe it.
What does it cost for the paint, is it chalk?
I went and bought a cheap 5-gallon bucket of primer, and it was $54 a primer.
Okay. But still, we're paying for that.
I mean, that's up to the council, if your direction to me is that you
Needs to be
will
spelled
not pay
out.
for it. Huh?
We need that direction. We need to have that
Well,
spelled
I
out.
just personally think that there needs to be a little sweat equity put in by the organizations. Yes, they're using the fields, we're maintaining everything, they're getting free use of this, free use of that, we're paying for an ice machine. I think someone can step up and pay for their own paint.
Well, that's the way it is right now.
I agree with that. I agree with that 100%.
Jerry, you saying the agreement spell out that they will pay for their own paint right now?
No, right
No.
now it spells out that we provide the paint, they do the striping.
Got it.
So if you want it that way, then make a motion to modify the agreements. And that would be both the two, Boys and Girls Club and Avon Park City Youth Football, that says that you will not provide the paint.
Now, I didn't read that in the Heartland Lions agreement.
It's not in their Heartland's line.
No.
So that's what I was saying, is their lease. And she asked for it, and I said, it's too late now. We've already
Right.
submitted the agreements, and if you want to come to the commission or the council and ask them if they'll do that, that's up to you. But right now, it's not in there, and it's not in there for a
You
reason.
don't have to change that agreement if it's
No.
not in there.
No, just the Boys and Girls Club and the Avon
Okay.
Park City Youth Football.
So far, it looks like there's going to be some movement with the paint. I'll be provided. Is there anything else? So we can make one motion for all of it.
And I think that that's good for now, just at least from my perspective, and then in the next 60 days, we'll be able to see how it goes, and then if we have to tweak it, there's a 60-day out.
Mhm.
And I think that we can modify the grant anytime in the future. I think this is a good
Yeah.
deal for the boys and girls and for Avon Park football and anyone else that uses the field, and $50 to stripe the field, I think, is still a gift from the
Why does
taxpayers.
the Boys and Girl Club need,
They don't need it, they don't
why
need
do
the
they need the
field.
black box for the scoreboard?
No, someone needs to store it. It just needs to be available, whether it's
football.
them, whether it's Avon Park football, whether it's the city upstairs, in an air-conditioned unit somewhere. It's just that there's equipment out there that staff couldn't find, that Adrian couldn't use, but yet someone knows where it is. And I don't know if the city bought it or if one of the organizations bought it, but if it's theirs and theirs alone, then that means that there's equipment that no one else can use. And do we need to go out now and buy equipment, for the scoreboard? That was donated by Bill Jarrett, and a portion of it, I believe, was used from RPAC. So I don't know how much money was tied into that. But what I'm getting at is that there's still some little gaps in here that need to be fixed.
Well, and a lot of it has to do with the fact that if it's not on there, somebody needs to put on there
Right.
as property of
Well,
city. Anything that's really of any substance. I
Yeah.
know a lot of cities do absolutely everything that has a tag on it that
Well,
says
what
that.
I'd like to see is that they work it out amongst themselves, and if they just can't do that, we'll figure that out in 60 days. And if it seems like they're not all playing like good boys and girls, then maybe we need to adjust the contract.
But I think they're gonna
I think so too.
cooperate and
I don't
figure
have
it
a
out.
problem. I think they'll be fine, but I just want to make sure that they share in the resources, even if it's just theirs, that they're able to share it one evening with someone else, because in the end, everyone's going to be
And if somebody breaks it, they gotta fix it.
Right. And that's on them.
So we'll need a motion to modify the Boys and Girls Club lease and the Avon Park Youth Football lease.
Can we do them simultaneously, or do we have to do each one individually since they're separate agenda items?
No, you can do them both simultaneously. I mean, it's really just direction to me, because you approve the contract anyway at some point. So, I mean, you can just simply say to modify that, and then based on the modification, you approve it, but you'll still have to approve the second one later.
Okay.
Okay.
So you can do it in two if you want, but it doesn't.
All right, anyone willing to make a motion?
I just had one more question, I'm
Go
sorry.
ahead.
Is there anything else that city staff does that goes out on, that you have to do on a Saturday that should be something that either one of these two organizations should be doing on their own?
Nothing but turn on the lights.
Nothing but turn on the lights?
Yep.
Okay. And do we have to do that?
I'd rather we do it, so
Yeah,
nothing gets
and-
damaged.
Because if it's not done right, as I understand it, it can
Yeah.
damage the lights,
Yeah.
and so I don't think that leaving that
Okay, I
responsibility
was
to
just
somebody
checking,
else.
because I know that it costs us to do that as well, and the city doesn't get reimbursed.
Well, that's
Okay.
that's
Okay, I get it.
the donation part.
Okay. Well, then I'll make a motion that we approve both the Boys and Girls Club lease and the Avon Park Youth Football lease with the exclusion of the city paying for the paint for the striping of the field.
I'll second.
Does that suffice?
That's good.
Okay. We have a motion and a second. Is there any further questions? Anyone wishing to speak? Seeing none, we'll call the roll.
Councilman Spurlock,
Yes.
Councilwoman Sutherland,
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Barnard,
Yes.
Mayor Anderson,
Yes.
motion passed.
When they're both, she did both of them at one time.
All right, so the Avon Park Youth Football lease is done as well. Next comes to the lease agreement between the Heartland Lions.
And theirs is different.
It's-
Theirs is a license agreement.
Right, they don't have any property that they
No.
have any occupation rights to, other than a license to utilize the field. And that's subject to cooperation with Avon Park City Youth Football and Boys and Girls Club.
Okay.
And I'd use a license instead of a lease because there is no occupation.
Okay,
Right.
does she have to fill out one of these every time she uses it? Or just one blanket one, and
One of these what?
when she uses the field, it's gonna be this one, I didn't, the term of this was,
I
Is it
left that
30
open.
days?
I left that open because I need to
Yeah.
know what you want.
I mean, I hate to be bureaucratic and say that she needs to fill one out every single time she uses it, but I would think that it would be per season. You know, I think she uses the field 8 times, and that the lease agreement be for the 8 times that she uses the field.
Okay,
I'm looking at the audience because David Cornett is the only one there from the, oh, there you are. Okay, Adrian is here.
okay, so.
Adrian, do you have anything you wish to say on this? or-
So what would be the period of time is really the important question.
Season?
Season.
Okay,
Adrian
so what
Diaz.
is your season run from?
So it started January 29th. That was the last Saturday in January.
All right, so I'll just say January 1st to
It goes to June.
June 30th or June 1st?
June like 3rd.
June 1?
3rd.
3rd. So, all right, January 29th to June 3rd.
Can we make it
Okay.
June 15 in case she has a delay in weather or something, or there's a
Okay.
rain event and they have to postpone a game for 15 days?
June
That's hot
15th?
football
Thank you.
games.
Yeah.
January 29th to June 15th.
It actually rained Saturday.
Yeah.
All
it was
right,
cold.
so if you look at 2, I mean, I don't know what other uses they have. So it's amateur development, and then concession sales, I don't know what else they have. That's basically it, right?
Mm-hmm.
And related activities, so I'll just take out these lines.
And you have no problem paying for your stripe and, or painting it? Okay.
Not at
And I
all.
knew that would be the case. And the other question I had for you was, this is just for games?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So if you want to make a motion, it would be to approve it with the dates that we've just mentioned
Okay.
as extension and removing the lines, because there's nothing else other than football league play, concession sales, and related activities.
All right, and then the other thing also, just to confirm with Adrian, is that you do have your 501c3 designation. They're working, I know it takes like 9 months to get it, but it's in the process, and you've got the proof of that?
Yes, and I sent it to Danielle and
And then
David.
your insurance liability, where you put the city as additional insured?
Correct. I sent that to Danielle and David as well.
Okay, and I just needed Jerry to confirm, do you know if it's $1 million or $2 million?
It's 2.
Okay.
He said it had to be 2.
So you're good on that side?
Okay.
Well, I make a motion that we go ahead and approve the license agreement between the Heartland Lions and the City of Avon Park to be in effect between January 1st and June the 15th.
January 1st, okay, to June 15th.
Okay. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any questions?
Just
Comments?
the black box.
I don't know who owns it.
Okay.
And again, that's something that you're gonna have to work out with Avon Park football and the boys and girls at some point. But now that we know that it exists,
Okay.
you know,
It was very nice, though.
Yeah.
The event was very nice. The Abercrombie, PA, the attorney, he had dancers, little girls, for a halftime show. And 2 of the coaches from the youth helped me stripe the field. So that was nice.
and I want to say also, since I live right around the corner from there, I heard a lot of people laughing. People were having a good time, and it was really nice to hear. Yeah,
Did
there
you
was a
have a
little
good
bit of
crowd?
music, but
I
it was.
did.
Yeah.
It
There were-
rained,
yeah.
so it kind of deterred them
Yeah.
at first, but by halftime.
But it
And I
sounded
kept-
like they were having a good
Yeah.
time. I can't get over that. I really want to emphasize that. People were having a good time, and there was just a lot of camaraderie. I looked over my fence just to make sure everything was going well. And it was nice. I thought they did a really good job, and I think you represent Avon Park very well. Thank you.
Thank you. So it will be in the newspaper, along with everybody's name. I gave everybody's name.
Did you win?
I did win.
All
Thank
right.
you. I did win.
Good deal. We have a motion and a second. Is there any further questions? Seeing none, we'll call the roll.
Councilman Spurlock,
Yes.
Councilwoman Sutherland,
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Barnard,
Yes.
Mayor Anderson,
Yes.
motion passed.
Thank you. Next up, under council member discussion, we have the City of Avon Park Charter.
These are the 3 items that Councilman Bernard had put on the agenda, and he was sick last week, so we pulled him to wait till he came back.
Finally getting around to it.
That was very nice of you, by the way.
All right, Jim, why don't you kick us off here?
Well, the charter has been an issue for the past several years, and I will admit that I was on the original committee in 2013, and Jerry was on there also, as well as a few other city citizens that are known without the city. And we did our best our main theme was to go ahead and make the charter drop down to about less than a third of the size it was to make it easier to read. And at that time, we didn't necessarily think that we were going to have somebody like an attorney nitpick every little word to try to verify whether it means this or mean that. And so it appears to me like we're going to have to do that. So I would just like to go over a couple items in here, just to mention them, and then maybe make a couple of suggestions of which direction we could go. But starting with Article 3, 2.01, composition of the City Council. It says 5 members elected at large by the electors of the city. So obviously we got to tighten up the word electors. Going to 2.06, limitation of powers of city council and council members. I just wanted you to look at, I think it's about the 3rd sentence down, where it says the members of the city council are empowered to appoint, however, the council may, at any open meeting, express its views and full and freely discuss with the manager anything pertaining to appointment or removal of such officers or employees. So even though some people said in the past we were not allowed to discuss employees at a city council meeting, this says we are. So I wanted to point that out.
Let me just simply say that you can't mandate it. And
Right.
You can't demand it,
Discuss it.
but you can discuss it.
You can express your opinion.
If you don't mind me interrupting just really quick on that one specific issue.
Sure.
Tonight, I spoke to Robert, and he answered me.
Yes.
In the most recent council, I would not have been able to ask him a question. I would have to ask David, and David would have to ask Robert, even though Robert's sitting 15 feet away. And I need clarification on that. If that's going to remain like that, I'd like to change that. I think that if Robert wants to speak up, it's up to him to speak up.
No, there's nothing that keeps you from,
Oh my God.
I-
People were like mum, like they were gagged ordered or something down there. So, I
Yeah.
mean, is it offensive for me to ask Robert a question in a council meeting in front of the city manager, or does the city manager need to be sitting there if I ask Robert a
no, this
question?
is designed, these provisions are fairly standard throughout the state of Florida, and probably out throughout the country, and that basically it's to keep you from stopping on the side of the road and telling people that are, maybe cleaning ditches or
Yeah.
doing some work, say, stop that, you need to go over here and do this, because then they have more than one boss.
Yeah.
It's basically to prevent them from having any other boss but the city manager, who's
But
the
in a
chief
public
executive officer.
setting with
Yes.
everyone else
And it-
here,
it
I'm
doesn't
not
matter.
asking him to go put a speed bump in front of my
Yeah,
house.
and you're not telling him to do something.
No.
You tell the city manager, that this is what we'd like to see, and then he passes it on. But there's nothing that keeps you from talking about it, saying, asking
Right,
questions.
discussing it.
Yeah, and saying, do you know what's going on with
Yeah.
this?
David, you had something?
Yes, I think in the past, you had some policies that may or may not have been written that were kind of prohibiting the employees from speaking to council members and such as that. I want you to know, from my point of view, and I've been on both sides as an elected official and as an employee of municipalities as well as the county. I want you to ask questions of employees. You don't have to go through me to do that. If you
And they
have-
don't have to answer if they don't want to.
But I have already told them, if a council person asks you a question, you can do it. If a council person tells you to do something, you don't do that.
Okay.
If y'all are asking questions about a budget issue or about a road getting paved or something like that, I have no problem whatsoever with you calling any of our department heads and talking to them. And run into them on the street and you want to talk to them, I encourage that, as long as it doesn't cross that line between asking a question and telling them to do something. You're gonna be fine, and I will support that all the way around.
For information only, yeah.
Yeah.
Information, exactly.
Yeah.
And if the employee doesn't want to speak and says, you know what, I don't know that, go talk to the city manager, I'm okay with that. I just want to make it clear that it is not a charter violation to ask a question of a employee of the city
Correct.
in any fashion, whether it's here or outside on the street.
Right, it just has to be, and I've run into this before, circumstances where the question isn't intended to undercut the authority of the city manager in
Right.
some kind of a, sly way. I know you all would not do that. I'm just simply saying, I have seen that, where, the question is, why are you doing this ridiculous thing? I mean, you understand the difference there. That's
Yeah.
more undercutting the city manager
Right.
Yeah.
as opposed to asking a question. So I just point that out for prosperity.
Okay.
Yeah. Well, maybe we could change some of the language there to make it easier to
Sure.
understand or clarify, as well as the several sentences below that where it says, nothing in the foregoing is to be construed to prohibit the individual members of the council from meeting with the manager or scrutinizing by questions, personal operations, aspects, and so on and so forth. That's
Oh.
one item I wanted to point out.
I think I can do that.
Okay,
Yeah,
And
and
then-
in that same section, before we go on,
sure.
under B, it says, any violation of a provision of this section by a member of the council shall constitute grounds for removal of office.
I was gonna bring that up next.
What exactly is that
just-
referring to?
That doesn't mean that, they said, somebody can say, such as a city manager or a city attorney, or a commissioner, or even the majority of the commission, that, you violated this, therefore you're going to be removed. This simply means that this is grounds for, what the Florida State has a removal process, basically.
Recall process?
That's right, the recall. And even though it allows recall doesn't mean that you can just recall somebody because you don't like them.
Right.
There has to be a grounds for that, malfeasance, misfeasance, ethical violations, things of that nature. And so this makes that one of those. It still has to have a recall in order to remove somebody. It can't be just,
Well,
we think that you need to be
Jerry,
removed.
under that, could you change the word shall into may constitute grounds?
Okay,
And I'm not trying to do, I'm just pointing out some facts and figures for people can understand where I'm going, and then I have suggestions on how we can get there when I'm finished. But I
Right.
just wanted to point out a couple things that I was concerned about or wanted to discuss. Over in section 3.04, under A, city manager shall create and discontinue any department or division and the city administration that the city manager deems necessary for the good of the city. I agree with that. The city manager shall approve no employment agreements, commit the city to any special terms of employment. Shall approve no employment, okay? Then, of course, we go under B, which I do not like at all, the term chief executive officer. I think city manager is a term that qualifies the position, and I don't think that that term needs to be in the charter. That's my own personal opinion.
Well, before you go on to B, there in A,
Yes.
I was going to go back to that
where,
as well.
where it says the city manager shall create and discontinue any department or division. Now, does that also mean that they could create or discontinue a police department, fire department, utilities department, you name it?
Well, I do know this, that if you're going to bring back the police department, you would have to have a budget item that the city would have to approve. If you're going to do away with a fire department, you would have to do away with a fire assessment. It's my thought that if we're going to be doing away with any public safety, that really truly a public safety entity ought to be something that the voters decide.
Right.
I would like to see the charter change that the fire department is going to be in the charter as a standalone department that is not to be nilly-willy done away with by the city manager. I don't think any city manager should have the arbitrary power to do away with that big of a public safety issue, especially when it's more cost than anything else. That should be something that the voters decide.
Yeah.
I agree.
Well, the only thing is that opens up a little bit of a can of worms, because what constitutes a fire department? Is it one guy? Is it 100 guys? You know what I'm
The
saying?
department as a whole, whatever
Yeah, I
the
understand, but-
assessment pays for. How about that?
Okay. And the assessment is set up by the city council.
It's a budgetary item. You can't pass a balanced budget unless you have a fire assessment.
Right. But I mean, right now, our fire assessment is not paying for the entire fire department.
It pays for what, 80 to 85%?
Yes.
No,
I thought
not
it
at
was
all.
around
Right?
80.
No, not even close. Right now, it only pays for a small percentage.
No,
The fire truck gets paid out of a different fund, but the employees themselves are paid out of the.
Well, we've lowered the fire assessment several
Yeah,
times.
which you have the flexibility to go from $70 to $180 right
Yeah,
now.
I'm just simply saying this most recent iteration of the fire assessment doesn't pay for what it used to pay for. It used to pay for almost all of it.
Yeah.
Now, the most recent one only pays for a kind of a small portion.
And that balances depending on the needs and the
Yeah.
employees and the pension and
Right,
everything
but
else.
you just said that you wanted to tie it to the fire assessment. I'm
No,
just
maybe
simply-
that was just a
Right.
way of putting it in there. I just think that public safety as a whole
Mhm.
is not the same thing as a utility billing person or
Right.
someone that drives a garbage truck. Although they're essential personnel, don't get me wrong, they're not the ones out there saving lives.
Right.
Maybe they could get out there and do CPR, but they're not the ones hired to protect the city for fires. I just don't think that the original spirit of this charter intended for any city manager to do away with public safety. That's just my personal feeling, speaking to people about that.
I would recommend basically, based on my experience, that we not make that a charter thing, but to actually, if you want to do that and provide some safety for, then remove the provision about the city manager producing or removing any department, because and require the council's approval for that.
So it's either all or nothing is what you're saying?
Well, I've seen situations where it had to be done immediately, but you have to wait for a vote, and will the vote go your way, and so on, with regard to police departments, not in regard to fire departments. But, yours is the only city that I have that has a fire department anymore, simply because of cost. I'm not saying that, that should happen. I'm just simply saying that you should leave yourself the option without having to go back there and have it so that the council, who is responsible to the citizens, can say, if the city manager wants to eliminate that department, here's why, and go through all the iterations. You can even make it a supermajority vote.
Right, supermajority is what I would like to see. That's just me. I don't.
So maybe we could just remove that one whole sentence. And I'm not trying to change the charter right now, I'm just trying to go over some things.
Right, and I am too.
I want the discussion, because then one of the options is for who's going to sit down with Jerry and come up with the changes, and then present it back to the council to vote on it and make any last minute changes then, before we bring it to election in November.
We have plenty of time to do that.
I'm just picking out a few things that I think we need to look at, possibly change or tighten up a little bit.
Well,
But,
just,
so any input right now is fine.
just bear in mind, yes, you can only change it, well, as a council, you have to have an ordinance to change it
Yep.
with a ballot and all that. If you're going to do that, then you need to provide a month for that. You need to provide a couple of months of notice to the
Elections office.
Elections
yeah.
office.
And there's an
do that.
election this year, by the way. We have Mr. Bernard and the mayor running.
So I just want to make sure you have that timing in your head, that you have to have an ordinance there as well.
That's why I'm trying to move forward as quickly as possible.
Okay. So, but what you're saying, Jim, is that, I mean, I know you've got other discussions. I've got some things that are similar to yours likely, and I think all of us have input.
Sure.
So tonight, we're just going to kind of glaze over it.
Yes.
And then bring in more details at the next meeting and say this is other changes?
All right, well, let me get down to my suggestions, our different options I thought we could do. We could empower a committee like we did before, where you would have a few citizens, but I think that's going to drag on. I think we could allow Jerry and maybe one council member to sit down and go over everything and then bring it back to the council, or even with David, and bring it back to the council, and then make the fine tune it at that time, and so we could bring it up for election in November. You know, there's a couple different options we could do, or we could just continue talking meeting after meeting.
Yeah.
But I think that kind of gets too
Yeah,
far
Well,
along.
well, I mean, I can make suggestions of language and just shoot them to you, and then you can tell me at the next meeting whether you think that I'm out of my head.
Okay,
And
that's a
you
good
know,
idea.
and
I
then,
like the
each
public
meeting you'll have a
forum.
different change.
Yeah, I just like the public forum. You know, the last time we did this, it was with a committee, and, you know, the committee, as benevolent as they were with their time, I thought was great. But in the end, you know, there were still questions. I think it's incumbent on us to do this. And if anyone from the audience has any input, then by all means, jump in.
Well, it'll be done by ordinance, so they'll
Yeah.
have plenty of
Yeah.
opportunity for input then, and then, of course, they have the ultimate opportunity for input at the voting booth.
Right.
Probably should schedule a series of meetings then. A series of dates that this will be brought up at then.
Sure, I mean, I'll just put it on old business for all the next meetings, you know, and I will just keep sending you stuff that, you know, and see.
So we
No,
need
I
a
don't like
deadline.
that. I do like this.
We'll need a deadline on exactly when the final version has to be read so that it gets in time to.
Yeah. I would ask, you know, the city manager or the clerk check with the Division of Elections as to when it has to be into them in order to get it on the ballot.
I would think maybe June.
Qualifying will be the last week of,
That gives us 2
July.
months to August, so, oh.
last week of July, first week of August is qualifying.
Well, they'll check with them and we can make our schedule at the next meeting.
Were there any other comments?
There
from
was
you?
just a couple more. I'm going to go through them real fast.
'Cause I've got one myself.
Okay, great. Budgeting and finance. Obviously, we know that the city manager shall prepare and submit for approval the annual budget. They shall approve no expenditures or commit the city to no expenditures or contingency expenditures not authorized by the ordinance, resolution, or vote of the council. I think that that's good to have in there. One thing I did want to point under E, continuity of office, where it does say designate a city employee as an assistant city manager. I know that's one thing we've talked about, whether in the future we want to have an assistant city manager or some other title, and I don't think it really makes any difference, but we need to definitely consider what direction we're going to do with that as far as having somebody that's going to be like the city manager's backup, whatever
Well,
terminology you want to use.
And the way it is right now, you know, it's just troublesome to me, and is that, you know, it's purely the city manager that designates the person that's going to be the assistant city manager, who will then be city manager in their absence. It may be that they select one, you know, a sort of selection approval process. In other words, he selects who he wants, and then you have to approve it. You know, sort of.
But
it's
then it
called
also
advice
says,
and consent.
but it also says that if it becomes vacant, then that assistant becomes the interim. And it would be incumbent on the council that night to say, you know what, we don't want you as an interim. We're going to hire a full-time, or we're going to go ahead and off the street. But it puts that person as an interim regardless of what we want.
But if we approve that person at a prior date,
I don't want to be told who I have to hire by the city manager. Sorry, David.
well, it's obviously a
I have no problem
suggestion.
with that.
Well, and I'm sorry. Go ahead.
If it's
I'm just, it's not that. I'm just simply
No.
saying for the interperiod, because, I mean, what does vacant mean? You know, if somebody is sick for an extended period of time, I mean, you're not throwing them out of office, but the other person is serving. In that circumstance, you still want to have some input to that. And the input would be, he chooses somebody he thinks is competent, you approve it. If it comes down to interim, in which case the position is vacant, then you have the right to say, okay, well, sorry, we're going to select somebody ourselves now, and we're going to go out to selection, or we know these people, this person is going to serve as the interim, and that's totally up to you. I'm just simply trying to cover, what you're saying with regard to the vacancy.
My only point is that if we did have an assistant city manager, he should be the most qualified to step in, even if it's just a temporary basis.
Agreed.
If it's long-term, then I think we need to make that decision, if for some reason.
And that would be up to him to select when I'm going, okay, David, you're going to Alaska, you're going to leave the keys to City Hall
No.
in someone's care.
No, I'm talking about having somebody permanent, assistant city manager or assistant something, as an employee of staff.
Well, I would
That
just simply have it as someone that the council approves. If David says like he's going away for a month or two, and he selects someone at City Hall, he says, this is my suggestion, do you guys approve it? If we approve it, well, we made the choice.
Do you want to do that each time, or do you want to select somebody who, in the event of that person's vacancy,
Yeah, I would
not vacancy, but absence, then they go in? Because that's what I'm suggesting. That's advice and consent. In other words, he says, I think this person's competent. They're on staff already. I'm going to make them assistant city manager. Their duties may or may not change or whatever.
Right.
But if I'm vacant for whatever reason, they're going to step in. And you would approve that. And if you don't approve it, then he has to select somebody else.
Yeah, I wouldn't have a problem.
I'm good with that process.
Okay.
I just want to clarify, what you're saying is that he's going to hire an assistant city
No,
manager
that-
or.
That was one of the possibilities.
Okay, see, and I don't think that
We haven't
who he
done that.
hires as an assistant city manager, because it's totally up to him to hire that individual, isn't somebody that I may want as a city manager. It may be someone you want. I just
Yeah.
think that whomever he selects is up to us to say to approve. So I guess if you all decide that person that he's hired is the one you want, then so be it. But I don't want to be told who the next city manager is going to be.
Yeah,
So
and
it won't be.
So you're basically
Yeah.
saying we should not have an assistant city manager.
no,
You
you
can have
guys,
it,
hold on. You guys are confusing it a little bit. He can hire someone that he calls the assistant city manager if he wants to.
Mm-hmm.
The person that would be outlined here doesn't have to be that person. It could be someone working
Danielle.
It could be Danielle or it could be Robert.
Right.
And then it's up to us to approve it that if he's gone, that person steps in. But if he wants to hire someone in a capacity called, the assistant city manager, he can do that. But those two
Yeah.
things are not linked.
If you
Agreed.
put it in the charter that this particular employee is going to be a step-in replacement officer, you can say, that we need to approve it. They're being put in that position of assistant city manager. You select, but we approve. It's advice and consent.
We've got a job description right now for city clerk that says exactly that in my absence, that person would act as the city manager.
Yeah, I had a problem. Nothing against Danielle, but not every city clerk is competent to be city manager,
Right.
and that's the problem that I had with that before. And without making any
How old
examples.
is that job description?
How
Pretty old?
Oh, I have no idea.
Because it used to be in the charter that if the city manager
It
was
was
out, then the
removed.
city clerk stepped
Right.
in, and that's probably the old job description. So
Right.
you can change that job description all day long.
Well, sure.
I took that out. Yeah, when we
Yeah, the
did the
city
last
clerk
charter
element
amendment.
out of the charter was completely removed.
Yeah, it had nothing to do with any city clerk then or now.
Okay.
It's just that city clerks don't always. I mean, in a city like City of Tampa, that person's going to be, they're going to have the competency to be able to sit in temporarily, but there's not the same requirements for a city clerk as there are for a city manager.
Okay, so
And
you're going to come up with a
I'll
suggestion
come up with
of
some
wording?
suggested language on advice and consent on that.
Okay.
Before you go in any deeper, can we just go back a little bit to what Jim started? Because I don't want to go, we're going to have to go back to it anyway if we're going to,
Where are we at?
on the section where you talked about the electors of the city, that needs to be changed to permanent residents of the city?
We're going to get that under Article 4, electors.
Okay, but we needed the definition of an elector.
Yes,
Okay,
that's one of my points. In fact, that's where I'm going to next.
okay.
To Article 4 elections, under the term electors, we need to tighten it up to show exactly what qualifies as an elector, and that's under 4.03, also qualifying
So wait, before you move on, should it
Yes.
say elector of the city versus elector of the state?
It is the elector of the city because they're a resident of the city. Is qualified as elector of the state. State has requirements, and you can have requirements, but I will just simply prepare you for the thing that your requirements are very limited. Durational requirements are frowned upon by courts. I did some research on this several years ago. I'd have to look at it again, but as I recall, the durational requirement of 6 months seemed to be the edge of possibility, if that's where you're heading with this. But the word permanent would not work. Because you can't say somebody who had to have been born here or, moved here a certain
Well,
or
we're
2
talking
years.
about people who vote. We're not talking about people
Yeah.
who run for office yet.
Yeah.
Okay, well, that's in resident. I can tweak this a little bit, but elector requires that they be a resident. Residency has to do with somebody's intention. If you had a hurricane, their house is blown down, the fact that they move out into one of the trailers outside the city limit that were put up by the FEMA doesn't mean that they've lost the intent to stay inside. The same thing having to do with somebody that purchases land inside and building a house. At what point does that intent mean that I'm going to live there now because I'm building a house? This stuff is all litigated, and there's not a lot you can do with that. But if you'd like me to look at it, I can kind of do a report on what we can and can't do.
Well, Sebring and Lake Placid have very easy to read understanding. I don't think it has to go into that deep of research. I mean, just as long as they could move here yesterday and vote here tomorrow. As
That's
long
up
as they
to
show, proof. I don't have a problem with that. I mean, if they live here, they live here, they get to vote here.
Well, the other electors that are voting for them are the ones that decide. I don't want to vote for somebody who just.
Oh, no.
moved here.
We're not talking about people who are, the qualifying, we know they have to be here for a year prior to the first date of qualifying. But we're talking about electors themselves, which are just the residents that vote, right?
Voters.
We're just talking about voters
Yes.
right now.
Right.
We're not talking about people
Right.
running for office just yet.
Okay. That's up to you. I will look at that and make a few notations on that.
Okay.
I just want it spelled out so that there's no discrepancy in somebody trying to sneak under somebody's legal advice that they got a voter registration card at one time and that makes them qualify.
Yeah, I just did the research
After
on
they
this.
moved out of town.
After they moved out of town.
I just did the research on that not too long ago, and it takes more than simply getting a voter registration card at a house you're renting or something like that.
Well, we need to have that in
And-
writing because that's all it took the last election.
Well, that's because nobody contested it. It's all
But
the
it was
same way now.
questioned.
Yes.
It was questioned, but there was never any answer from,
Well, that's the thing. is
Anybody.
Somebody has to bring a case.
well,
And, usually it's the person that's running against them brings the case and says, I'm sorry, you're not an elector. And they need, make an injunction that you not be put on the ballot.
I actually did that.
Okay. And what happened to that?
My understanding is that a copy of my
complaint.
complaint was to be sent to the person who was qualified by the then city manager and city attorney, saying that I basically did not think that they were qualified even by their own terms in front of witnesses that said they no longer lived in the city. And I was told that the complaint would be given to that candidate and that they would have a chance to either respond or do something or do nothing. And
Well, a complaint is not, a colloquial complaint.
Right.
It's not enough. It has to be a lawsuit complaint.
right, it basically just was a complaint, and basically what I was told was if they were given sufficient proof that Penny Ogden would notify the places in Avon Park where you vote that this person could not vote on anything to do with the city of Avon Park. And so I never heard anything, so I assumed that was done.
Well, if they're not qualified to vote here, they're not qualified to hold office.
Well, that was the problem. Somebody said that they were.
Yes.
The
And
previous
did.
city attorney said that they were.
And did run.
Because they were allowed to vote in Avon Park, which could have been in Avon Park Lake or outside the city.
I'm speaking generalities. I'd be happy to look at that.
This is what we want fixed. So
Okay,
it can't happen again.
I
That's
will-
what we want fixed.
Yeah.
I'll work on that.
Okay, and I only have one other item I think left.
Yeah,
'cause
well,
we'll-
in that same section, we
Please
used
do.
we used to have language in there that spelled out that we have to maintain city residents
Continually,
during,
continuous.
during our
Yeah.
time in office.
During the time of qualifying as well.
Yes.
Yeah.
Because that was the problem. The person qualified, and then during the week after qualifying, well, they lived here in
The
the
day
city
after.
for a whole year prior to the first date of qualifying, as the charter says. But then 1 week after qualifying, they moved outside the city limits and still ran, and were intending on continuing. If they won, then they would still live outside the city limits, but yet be a council person. That has to be eliminated. That actually should be included, that if you're going to run for office, that you live here for a whole year prior to the date of qualifying, that you are still a resident during the time of during the time of your running,
Right.
and then when you're sworn in, you're also already a resident, and you remain a resident until the
During your
term
term.
of your
What you're talking about with
office.
regard to the 1 year prior
Mhm.
is durational qualification.
Yeah,
And durational qualifications, I mentioned, are really frowned on by the courts. It's not impossible. I'll look at it again because I have not researched that aspect in quite some time. But as I recall, it was a 6-month,
You have a
and
year.
some courts liked it, some courts didn't. At that point, you were allowed to have some kind of durational limitation, but that may have changed. I'll have to look at that again.
but you know what, Jerry? I mean, they can. Anyone can sue over anything they don't like in this charter. I mean, at what point do we just bow to it and say, "Well, forget it"?
Well, yeah, your charter is
Every
pretty.
community I've seen, all the charters that I have read, all have a year or a 6-month.
I'll check it out. I mean, I did look at it several years ago, and 6 months was safe. I mean, a lot of people had a year, but it only really matters if somebody brings a case, obviously,
Right.
Were you saying that you couldn't mandate that they live inside the city while holding office?
No, you have to be a resident.
Okay, while you're in
Okay.
office.
But resident is not always the same as, actually being there at that moment. In other words, they could move out, as long as the intent is to stay. They're, and there's a lot of things that come up. And there's a Florida Supreme Court case on that point,
Right.
which I'll provide you and we'll go over and talk about those aspects. But can they temporarily be outside because of one reason or another, but their intent is to stay inside, but then they're going to move back in? Yes.
Got it. Okay.
It's not, but it can't be. I went inside, I got qualified, now I'm moving outside, and I don't ever intend to move back in. That's just, if that intent can be shown in court, then they're not qualified.
Yeah. Okay. In that same section at the bottom, it talks about they have to be up to date on their city taxes, occupational license, utility bills,
Code
code
enforcement.
enforcement violations, yada, yada, yada. I really don't agree with that. And the reason being is that if you have a person, if you have a rogue administration that is up to no good, and you have someone who wants to run for office to change that, well,
Yeah.
it's very
It's a trap.
easy. It's very easy to come up with a code enforcement
Are you
violation.
saying that there are political motives behind
As someone
some
who's been on the other
administrations?
side of this administration at one time or another, I know how easy it is to be.
Manipulate.
I
Yeah.
can't imagine.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, so.
I agree. You know what?
I'll look
I
into
agree
that.
with that.
All right. If you want to remove it, it's easy. If you
Yeah.
want to keep it, it's more difficult because I think it seems to be problematic anyway.
Is anyone opposed to removing it?
No, not at all.
Okay.
Not to say that current administration would do that.
No. This is no reflection on current administration.
Thank you.
I think anything you do with regard to this charter should not have anything to do with any temporary issue or.
No,
the
but-
reason- This is your constitution, basically.
But this makes a lot of sense. It really does.
Right.
But the argument we had beforehand on the voter registration, it was simply because, we just had a card that said Avon Park. And
It had precinct. It had this precinct on it.
That's
and-
what I'm talking
yeah.
about. And had moved out then, was not in the precinct, not even in the city limits anymore, but yet that card said precinct 1 or whatever it was.
And that's something that when you move, you're supposed to register
Yes.
your license, and it triggers the voter's registration as well, and not everyone does that. I know several people that still have a
Absolutely,
card for
you're
Avon
right.
Park and don't
You're
live here.
absolutely, you're right.
And what Jerry was
But-
saying is you'd have to have legally
Challenged.
challenged that.
That's right. It should be easy to be legally challenged because that was simply what was going on.
Right. All right, I will look into that and, report to you on some notations about that issue of electors and
Okay.
residency.
And backing up one section up here, two sections, in 3.06, with the city attorney powers and duties, should we add an education requirement or an experience requirement into that section?
Well, the education part is a requirement of the state with regard to, in order to take the bar. Then you can't be a member of the Florida Bar unless you take the bar and pass it.
You're going to have to do that in a job interview.
But the experience aspect is totally up to you.
Mm-hmm.
You might have somebody who spent many years as a city manager, just got their Florida Bar license, and you say, wow, even though this person hasn't been an attorney for a long time, they've been a city manager forever.
Right.
And so, where they've been working some other position that gives you confidence. That's up to you. So a lot of people do put experience in.
What kind of
I
levels of
wouldn't build it
experience
too
have you
much.
seen?
Board certified.
5 years, board certified is something else. I mean, I am a great believer in it since I have been board certified for quite some
Can
time.
you explain what that means, please? Just
Certainly.
for the general public.
Right, board certified means that you've had to have experience in order to get board certified. You have to then take an exam. It's a special exam for that area. It's like city, county, local government law. It's an exam. And people flunk that just like the bar exam. It's not even an easy, pass-through thing. I knew everybody that was taking it, and if somebody didn't pass it, it was a very prominent city official. And that was many years ago. But so not everybody passes those. And then you have to maintain that by CLEs. As my contract, I have a certain amount of CLEs that you all pay for because I wouldn't have to take those but for the fact that I'm a city attorney. And so I split that among the cities. And because I have to keep up on my knowledge of the area. So those are the three things and you have in order to get certified. And they do a background investigation all over again, even though it's done with the bar. I just had my second renewal done, which is every 5 years you have to have it totally renewed. You have to renew. You have to pay for a renewal every year, but there's a total renewal and reinvestigation every 5 years.
But it's a concentration in the area of expertise that
Right.
you serve. I mean, that really is the crux of
Right.
it.
Yes.
Right.
I compare it to like if you're going to have surgery by a surgeon, would want somebody who just got qualified as a surgeon or somebody who was board certified because they had done hundreds of surgeries of that type? That's the person I want to do my surgery, and that's the person I want to represent the city as a city attorney. I think being board certified should be in there.
And I don't object to that. I just want to make sure that if we do that, you can get some board certified lawyers as well that may not, that, let's just say.
Doesn't mean we have to hire them, though.
Yeah, but let's just say you've got someone with 30 years of experience that you're vetting against someone that has 20 years of experience as a board certified attorney for city government, but yet the 31 has 25 years of city manager experience. You're right there excluding yourself by the limitations of your charter. If you have it in your job description, that would be something different. I mean, as long as I'm on this council, I am never going to ever approve anybody that's not board certified, period. But then again, I mean, if someone else runs and takes my place, they may have something else in mind.
Yeah.
But I don't want to be limited in the charter on that.
I see your point, because there was one attorney that applied the last time around who I think
Superb.
was locally, right, within the county?
Yes.
And he had a large amount of experience, but wasn't board certified, but seemed to be very qualified. So you have a good point there, Maria.
Yeah, I think that's a good way to go with it too. I mean, it's very
Have it
restrictive.
for job description only.
Okay.
And then we could accept or not
Yeah.
accept.
Yeah,
Okay.
I got my first position without having board certification.
And look where you are now.
That's right.
Working for the city of Charm.
What's
Again,
next?
I got one more thing if everybody else is done, just a comment, and that's under section 5.04, investigations. I just want everybody to be aware of the fact it says the council may conduct investigations into the affairs of the city and the conduct of any city department, office, or agency, and may return the services of another law enforcement agency or licensed investigator for that purpose. Is that something we want to keep in there or not?
No, I do
No.
not want to be subpoenaing witnesses. I think that if there's an issue that an employee or even when any council person has an issue, that it be turned over to the appropriate authorities and let them conduct an investigation.
Okay.
I think we need to not be involved in our own investigations.
I don't think we should treat this as a court of law.
No,
Okay. That's why I wanted to bring it up.
no.
Okay?
Okay.
We'll have to have another board-certified lawyer in criminal law for that, right?
Okay.
No.
That is all I have under that.
Okay.
So do we want to just continue having regular updates from our city attorney and then just kind of making some minor changes for the next couple of months until we think we're ready?
I do have a question while we're on this, and I don't know if this is a charter issue or not. I know that in the 80s and maybe in the early 90s, the city council at that time had health insurance paid by the city. City of Sebring has it as well. And as city council got off of this board or got on, if they worked somewhere where they already had health insurance, then they opted not to take it. I spoke to the City of Sebring administrator, and he told me that there are several people on his council that use it, and then the other ones that already have it, they don't get a credit, they just don't use it. But I don't know if they eliminated it for budgetary reasons or if it was because the entire council all worked somewhere where they had health insurance, but I would like to see it come back to the city council.
Would that have anything to do with the charter?
I don't know.
Okay.
I don't think so.
I don't think so either. You would have, you can develop that by ordinance. I do know that some cities do provide insurance, health insurance to their commissioners.
Okay.
I had one item, if you don't mind, while we're still on this. The issue has come up, and it's always, in the past, I have raised issues with it regarding employment contracts. Employment contracts, I believe, I'm sorry, I'm going a little bit management, a little bit law here in this regard, but I spent many years in management as well. It's intended to bring people from a long ways off, and they're changing schools for their kids, and they're buying homes, and they're leasing, or they're leasing a place, moving their family, from Maine or from Washington. So how do you fix that? If you have an ordinance that says that you have these certain limitations, then they can be changed. I think you should have something in the charter that requires a supermajority vote at least for employment contracts, because you guys paid a lot.
Yeah, and you know what, that makes sense, because if you have a non-supermajority for that, then it can come back at any time. Contracts can come back depending on who's sitting up here, but if you have it in your charter, it does limit that. Those severance payments, and under full disclosure, when I left the city, I had a severance payment, not to the extent that others have had, but nonetheless, I had one, and it was nice.
And I think the idea of a perpetual one is just
Right,
ridiculous.
no. I think it should be based off of years of service working for the city, and that's something that can be added to the employee's handbook.
I would go a step further and say that, they should have a maximum period of time that they're operating, because the
Right.
whole idea is to allow that person to shift and feel some confidence.
Right.
But they shouldn't feel confident forever that they're going to get $100,000
Right,
from
well-
you if they leave their position. That's like anybody else. You leave a position, you take a risk.
Well, if you've been here for 10 years, I think that there ought to be some allocation for that, whether it be in the employee handbook. But I don't believe that anyone should get a 5-month severance if they've only been here for 8 months.
Yeah, I think that sort of thing you can work into that. But I'm referring to keep people. Don't do away with contracts, because I think they're a good tool for bringing qualified, excellent people to the city.
But Jerry, if a qualified person looks at the charter, then they'll say, I don't want to go there. Let them go. If they don't like the terms of the charter or the terms of the city council, then they don't have to apply for the job.
Well, no, I'm referring to the employment contract as to putting this this provision in there, at least to allow for it, but to have it as a supermajority. We think this person's exceptional. They're having to move their family here. They're having to make all these changes. They're losing a job that's already paying them X amount of money in order to move here. Let's give them some a contract that at least keeps them confident for 3 to 5 years or something like that. But then it's over. At that point, it expires and it doesn't get renewed. like I said, the perpetual aspect of it and the aspect where, city residents are getting it just don't make any sense to me. Now, but you do as you wish. Those are, I'm getting from, but that was something that was voiced to me, with dismay by some people with regard to the fact that occurred. And I'm just telling you, I agree.
And I tend to agree with you as well. But if it gives the council the allowability to give a contract to someone that's moving here from Timbuktu, then yeah, obviously they're making a big change in their life, and there ought to be some accommodation for that.
Right.
Yeah. But it wouldn't have a dollar figure in there. That would be something that would be up to that council at that time to.
I believe it generic, but, it's as to how many months it is, because it won't matter, depending on what you want. Obviously, the statute requires no more than 5 months, but, you could make it less if you wish. But it allows you that opportunity to give somebody that comfort, because, it's a high-pressure job. The life expectancy of a city manager is about 5 years,
2 weeks at a time.
That's all I got. And that's not even written down.
So I will make, unless I hear objection, I'll go ahead and try and work something up on that.
That's fine with me.
Yeah, I think there's certain circumstances where a contract would be good, especially if it's somebody who you knew before, or maybe their qualifications were so outstanding that you'd be willing to do that, as well as the fact that you also have an in-easer out clause that was not going to give them a ton of money after they're here a shorter period of time. So,
but I wouldn't want it required. I wouldn't want that just because it's in the charter doesn't mean that you have to do it either.
That's right.
Right. I agree.
Okay.
So let Jerry come up with something.
Is there anything else on the charter?
Nope.
No, I think I'm sure I'll get some phone calls tonight. I mean, the same things that you've gone over tonight were a lot of the things that I ran on, and I know that Stanley did as well.
Yep.
My only thing, again, it just goes back to the fire department, that whole issue. I just want to make sure that no one can them willy-nilly.
Right. I have no doubt that we will probably get lots of phone calls and emails from citizens, and that is the entire point of all this, of dragging it out for a few meetings, is to allow the citizens to come forward and tell us what they want to see in their charter. So.
And then just to reiterate, the subpart B, which are the last 5 or 6 pages of the charter info in here. I spoke to Jerry before the meeting. I could have sworn that the civil service element of this of the charter was removed in the last election. So these last pages are
right. And we just need to contact Municode and have them remove that from our code, because it was removed before. Apparently, the previous clerk forgot to get that done.
2013.
Yeah.
Okay. Anything else on the charter? Seeing none, moving along to item number 13, purchasing policy. Jim, that's you again.
I'm going to make this as quick as possible. This was just some of the items that I wanted to briefly just mention, not necessarily discuss, because of some of the issues we've had recently over purchasing. The first item, I think, is under page number 6, where about section number 7, about all vendors who've asked to be on our vendor list. I understand there are some questions about some vendors that were not allowed to be on the list in the past, and so on and so forth. So I think that there should be something in there that, I know there's certain qualifications, but I think Avon Park needs to know, that the people of this community know that if they want to be a vendor for the city of Avon Park, they should be able to at least apply and get consideration.
Okay. One of the things that I'm working on, that I've kind of got on the back burner, is to update our vendor list.
Yeah.
You know, it's not working.
Not very.
Can I just give a generic comment on your purchasing policy?
Yeah.
No,
It is
David, just
really
the-
convoluted. And the numbering system is it's not impossible, but it's difficult. Okay. But might be something that you want to have staff look at or whatever. But I've seen a lot more simpler ones for staff to read.
You mean the numbers as in 10s and 20s?
Yeah, well.
I mean, isn't that so that there's room for other stuff in between each one of those batches of 10?
I'm talking about, as opposed to that, 1.1, 1.2, 1.3, 2.1, 2.2, 2.3, as opposed to these four-digit numbers. But it's just I've never seen this before. I've never seen this format before. And I can follow it, but it's like,
That's why I'm going by page.
yeah, it should be a lot easier to go by and refer to. And you can actually, if you wish, number the lines as well. But I would just, suggest a different format.
Is that something we'd like our city manager to look at when he has time?
Might be waiting a while on that one.
Sorry about that.
But aren't these policies the city manager's job? I mean, are we the ones that set this policy? I mean, we could infer suggestions, right? Or is it up to us to?
We can make changes to them.
Oh,
Okay.
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. That, in fact, it's on my recommendation, it's approved by either a resolution or an ordinance, because it gives teeth to it, and there's circumstances where if it's not followed, just as you just saw, that if it wasn't done that way, somebody would say, well, that's just a policy, and you're not following some policy here, 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 and here.
Yeah.
You're not following it. But if it's done by ordinance, then they can't say that because they say, well, they messed up and that was wrong, but this is the law and we follow it this way.
Right.
Because I had a case like that, quite a number of years ago, and it was just hard to prove that we followed we ended up winning it, but it was that was an area that caused me some heartburn.
Well, on page 1 there, it says Exhibit A, Ordinance 14-15. Does that qualify what
Right.
you're discussing?
Right, and that was on my recommendation, and I actually made the last changes. I guess I added in the piggybacking the request of
With the
Julian.
sheriff?
Yeah.
What-
We don't have it in here that you get, if you are a local business, that you get preference, even if you're 1.5% higher than the next guy and then the next
I
guy.
think
I
there's
know that the
something
county
in
has
there.
local preference. Do we have local
think-
preference in here?
There are some preferences.
Don't we have the ability to choose whoever we wish?
Well,
Yes.
no, you don't.
No.
On a certain amount.
Well, you have to follow the general
procurement policy.
requirement
Yeah.
is,
Yeah.
number one, the procurement policy, but number two, it has to be, low bidders. It doesn't always end up that way, but the lowest bidder that's competent and qualified, things like that. But there have been cases where they've reversed decisions because they were competent and qualified, but they didn't like them. And you can't just do it at your discretion. But the aspect of local preference, as I recall, you don't have a huge area. You can't simply say, I don't care what anybody else bid, we're going with this person because they're local, but you can apply points to that as a something that you look at, as I recall, but I haven't looked at that in a while.
But does that apply only when you're doing bids, or can it be in something that's below the city manager's threshold, where all he needs are 3 sealed envelopes without having to go to a 30-day bid? Can he, decide on that, or would that have to be in here as well?
Well, it can't. You should have your policies for the most part in here.
Okay.
If
Well,
you're
that's
gonna have
not in
local
here then.
preference, then you can give points for that, but you can't just simply choose it. On most ends, I don't know. There might be some more case law at this point with regard to your ability to do it for lower bid items. But the big bid items, you can just apply points. That's it.
There are some items on page 12, if you want to look at that, about under where it says note of a tie in a bid, that, one is minority business, three is other specific considerations may be included, doesn't specify.
In the published
In the published
specifications.
specifications, and then such a,
I'll look at whether what the requirements are for local preference.
But local preference for the city manager on items that are below the threshold where he doesn't have to go in a 30-day bid, and then local preference for items that do require a 30-day bid notice. So there's 2 separate.
So for formal and informal, right?
Informal, yeah, because he'll be doing that all day long. And the difference would be, you know, would we have a 1.5 if bidder number, if the highest bidder is only 1.5% higher than the lowest bidder, but yet the highest one is inside the city limits and it falls within that threshold, what do we want that threshold to be?
Have you seen page 18?
I haven't got to that one yet. So, there's a lot of these that need to be looked over, I think.
There you go.
Yeah, the percentage
Yeah.
difference.
But it just doesn't give the city manager with your threshold, is what I'm getting at. This is, you know, this is a 30-day bid if, I guess, it goes out. Because these are all amounts in excess of your procurement threshold.
Yeah, well, it says, it's, exclusions are items exempt from competitive bidding, contracts for professional services, purchases which are funded in whole or part by the government entity. So, I mean, you can tighten that up if you want. If you have any recommendations on what you'd like to see, like under a certain amount, you know, that he can go totally with that. I can research as to whether we can do that.
I mean, if that's the sentiment of the council, that's just mine. I think that, you know, we need to help the guys that pay our taxes.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of things in here that you can almost read the whole thing and all of a sudden learn, I didn't know that. I mean, but like on page 12, it also says up there in around C, for procedures, bids will be opened and read by the city manager, department head requesting a bid after bids opening has been completed. So, I mean, I don't know whether we've ever read all bids. We've just read preferred bids. So that's something needs to look at. But let me just run through a couple of things here, and maybe somebody else can bring up things in the future at a later meeting.
Well, let me just mention, respond to that. I mean,
Okay.
if they're accepting the bids and they're doing the shortlisting, the shortlisting has to be done in the sunshine.
Okay,
Okay.
I agree with that.
But you can have a subcommittee that does that sort of thing.
Okay. Let me just run out a couple more things. On
Okay.
page number 8, under purchases, number 5, under 5C, where it says 5,000 to 25,000, written quotations. I personally would like to have things in that value to be, at least have council be notified of those.
What page is this?
On page
Page
8,
number 8.
under procurement territories, number 10,
Okay.
number 5, purchases, A, B, and C.
Uh-huh.
Under C, anything over 5,000 to 25,000, even though that's something the city manager makes a decision, I would like to be notified of those.
Well, for that matter, why couldn't we just have on a monthly basis all the checks that were written and get a list of everything that's been signed?
Well, there may be a lot of those.
Well, but there's a
Danielle, is
list.
that correct?
It may not be the checks themselves, it's that one list that shows every single expenditure and the amount of every check.
If you want to go with me to sign them, you can go
Yes.
every week. And
No, I'm just saying, that's just a level
Learn
of
how to sign
transparency
my name.
that
I know.
would cover that.
Let me just also point out that you're required to approve any contract, regardless if it's under the classification and procedures here. Or if there's a contract involved in it, you're supposed to approve those.
Okay.
Council members, I assure you that I will keep you informed of anything that I'm purchasing.
I'm sure you will.
Okay.
I'm not too sure everybody else did, but, okay, let me go on real quick. I only have a couple things there. There's a bunch we could go through. On page 17,
But Jim, before you jump there.
yes, go right
What
ahead.
did you want to do on page 8?
What,
I said is under the ones that were 5,000 to 25,000, I would like to make sure that council, not approve it, but at least be notified.
So what you're saying is before he does a purchase for someone to go remove a tree that has a limb that's falling on Highway 27,
No,
you
I
want to
don't care if
know?
it's before or after the fact, but if he was to make 5 decisions a week at $10,000 for 4 whole weeks, that's a lot of money being spent.
But what if those $10,000 purchases were in the budget already and we approved the budget at the beginning of the year?
Well,
He's
that's
already authorized to do
Well,
that.
that's a whole different ballgame then.
But then he needs to know.
But I can make that part of my monthly report anyway.
Yes.
Okay.
Well, I think you'll find that the budget is fairly general, where what he's requesting is fairly specific. You know, so, I mean, you may have, you know,
No, I just wanted to
you
know
might
the
have
difference. I
$2
wanted
million
to make-
set aside for the roads,
Yeah.
but don't you want to know if there's a, you know,
Yeah, I do, but I
10%?
just wanted to make sure that that's where he was going.
No,
I mean,
if
you
it-
want even a tighter.
Well, I just, like I said, anything over 25,000, the council has to approve, right? So if the city manager does 5 items a week at $10,000 or $20,000, and we may never know about it. That's,
And like I said, but if it's a budgeted item where he has to go buy a truck and it was in the
if it's-
budget,
I don't have a problem if it's in the budget. But if it's something else that.
but does he still want to tell us about the $25,000 purchase? Is that what you want to know as
Well,
well?
definitely over
Well, he's-
25,000 has to come
He's
before.
not, he's not saying approval, he's just simply saying just.
Just
have-
wants
have
to
it
know,
in the list of
okay.
Just wanna
things
know.
that we did.
I mean, I want to know how our city manager's
Okay.
spending our money to make sure it's legit.
Well,
How's
it's
that?
public
I got
record
it.
anyways. I mean, at any time, you could go back and say, give
Well,
me
in the
every.
past, we always didn't get our public records, did we?
Yeah, but you got to also remember that even though it's a public record, if a council member doesn't know about it, then how do you know that there's a record on it?
Right.
So I think the report is good. I think that's fine.
Okay.
I get it.
Okay, thank you.
What else you got?
I wasn't sure. All right, now I forgot. Page 17, I forgot what I was going to talk about. For some reason, I didn't. Maybe it was just general procedures going over. I didn't check anything off on 17, so let's go to 20. See if I mark something there. Yeah, that's the same thing I brought up under 80, bidders, vendors database. I just think that we need to get that updated, and it's because it seemed like in the past, it always seemed like it was always the same 1 or 2 vendors that were chosen for almost everything. And in the past, I've had some small business owners who asked to be on the vendor list and were never put on there, or never given a reason why.
But here's the thing, you can put them on a vendor's list, but if they're on a list and the list doesn't get used, then it's a moot issue. So, I mean, how do you go about making sure that everyone, if there's 30 people that sell flowers, are we gonna call every single one of them and ask them how much a dozen roses are?
No, we're not.
One of the things that y'all need to know about me is that I'm extremely tight, and I don't just accept one bid on something. I usually ask for at least 2, possibly 3, even if it's on something for $300 or $400. That's just the way I've always worked. So I will continue to do that. I don't know if it needs to be written in the procurement policy like that, but
I wouldn't recommend it, but I think you have to rely on your city manager to some extent with regard to those
Yeah.
types of things.
So other than that, I'm good unless somebody wants to check it in the future to go over it again.
There was one in here that said that if electrical installations were less than $200,000, that you didn't have to go to bid. Where is that?
I
saw it
assure
just a
you I won't
second
do
ago.
that either.
I saw it just a second ago.
Huh?
Danny's checking it out for us.
I don't know
What
where I
page
saw
was
it, but
that
I did
on?
see
That
it.
needs, that whole section needs to be,
Uh,
what page was that
It's
on?
on, I think 1349, I think it's, where it says note right under G,
What page?
13 of 49, page 13.
Under the note.
Yes,
Yeah,
that.
Construction project costs, so forth.
It says that if the, yeah, Jerry, can you look at that thing? Page 13, section, right below section G.
Here.
I don't know how that ever would have been put in there like that. That just doesn't seem right to me at all.
No, it doesn't. That's basically what I was getting at. I think we need to go over this whole thing, you know, and David, I don't mind if you go over it and make suggestions too. Because I know that, you know, everything you're going to do is on the up and up, and I trust you. And you've proven that so far to this council. And I think that, you know, I know you don't have time next week or the week after maybe, but as time goes on this year, it's something you could look after. If
Yeah.
anybody else sees something, we
And I
could
think
bring it up.
finance department can help with it, any employee that does go through this.
Yeah,
I think this notice is not a allowance so much as a notifying. This is a statutory thing under 255.220 and 255.0525. It has limitations, and you have to bid if it's within these limits, but you can have it where they have to bid at lower if you want.
okay.
But it also says local government must competitively award, so it can't be another willy-nilly, hey, can you put this, install this for us? It still has to be, but still it says if it costs more than 50,000. Here we're saying in other areas that anything above 25,000 has to go to
25,000, yep.
bid, but on this one we don't?
Yeah,
I'll check that out.
okay.
Thank you.
Okay, you want that, can I have that paper back, or do you want to keep it?
You want to keep, you want that?
I'm keeping my rail records, but you can have it if you like
No,
it.
that's all right. I'll see if I can find it.
So Jeremy, I have a question on procurement as well. We have a contract, for example, with, I don't know how many contractors, that if you need a certain amount of curb
Page
put
13.
in, they put a dollar amount. If there's so much
Oh, you got it?
asphalt that
Okay,
needs to
good.
be overlaid for lineal feet, there's a dollar amount put in there. And I don't know how many of those contracts we have, but do we only have one of those contracts? And if we do, can you still go out to bid with other individuals, or do you have to stick to that contract? For example, Excavation Point has a contract with the city of Avon
right.
Park, and anything that's on that list that they provide, all they do is they go call a subcontractor sometimes and mark it up 10%. Do we have to use that contract, or can he go to any other contractor and get
Depends on-
something else?
Depends on what the contract says, because,
Let's review that contract, because I was gonna bring that up tonight too.
that, there are some contractors that says, we win the bid, here are our prices, and you shall use us, for these, for this type of work. But if it's just simply providing you a shopping list that you could also go out bid or call for prices on as well, that's something totally different.
Yeah.
But it's really not so much a bid in that case, because you're just, obviously, because you're not really holding that person to it, and they can't hold you to it.
Well, but the interesting thing I'm wondering about is, so they have this contract, and it gives the charges that they're gonna charge on their contract.
Right.
So anybody else out there already knows what those costs are, and they can come in 2 cents less and say, well, I'm cheaper than that person. Is that fair?
No, it's not fair.
So who's it not fair to?
It's not fair to them, really. I mean,
Which
I
one? The
think
contractor that has the contract?
Yeah, had the contract. And that's
Okay.
why I say, it's not really a contract, it's just basically a shopping list, because, it's not a bid, it's a shopping list, because if you're not held to it, why would they want to tell you what their best price is? I mean-
So if they are held to it, then nobody ever puts it out for bid, and they just automatically use that company over and over and over again, and we may or may not ever know about
And
it.
I'm
But you
not
can limit
here
the
to-
amount of time.
And as far as I know, they're an exemplary company. I'm just
Yes,
using them as an
absolutely.
example.
Yes.
I just want to make
No,
that
I agree with you
clear.
100% on that, too.
Well, and you can say, this requirement will only be good for a year, or 2 years, or 3 years,
And I
whatever.
think it does, but that's something that if you could review, I'm just curious, because there are other companies, whether it's a smaller company.
Yeah, I think it's actually yearly.
Yeah,
And I
are those
believe-
prices negotiated every year?
I believe it's yearly, and I believe it is, it's not mandatory. I'm almost positive it's not mandatory.
But if it's not mandatory, then we ought not to treat it like it's mandatory.
Yeah, well, nevertheless, we need to look at it and see what the deal is with it.
All right. You want to send it to me, I'll be happy to look at it.
Okay.
I know I did one years ago, but I haven't seen the most recent one.
Yeah.
But, it sounds to me like, are they really going to give you their best price, if, like I said, if
And they may very well be, because obviously they got the contract.
Yeah.
I just want to make sure that we take care of our local businesses and that everyone get a chance to put in bids. We've got this huge budget with all these infrastructure projects on it, sidewalks, whatnot, and it always seems to be the one person that
Yeah.
comes in and does it all.
That's my whole point.
And I get questions quite a bit from other smaller businesses that they don't even think that they want to move to Avon Park because they already know that someone's got all the jobs when it comes to this type of project.
Agreed.
Is there anything else in the purchasing policy?
Not for now. I'd
All
like
right.
to, can we just revise it
Yes.
further? Okay.
Absolutely. Moving on, item number 14, recycling.
Oh, boy. My favorite subject. Everybody knows I love recycling, but I also know that it doesn't seem like it's something we can do. And it really comes down to the issue I have now with the people that still use the yellow-blue recycling bins. I notice even where I live or in other places I drive without the city, I still see the yellow-blue bins, recycling bins out there. I still see them being used for garbage, and I believe some of them are being picked up as garbage. Maybe
Yep.
not all of them, but some of them. So I think we have to do something one way or another with the recycling bins. One, are we going to use them or save them for recycling in the future? I don't think that's cost-effective to do the recycling now, and I don't think it's cost-effective to keep those carts. So then what's the other option? What could we use those carts for? We could use those to somebody who wanted to have an extra cart because they have more garbage than the average family of four, let's say. If they do that, then are we going to go ahead and charge them for a double pickup? Because some of them are getting double pickups now for free just because the garbage is out there and maybe it stinks and that people say, let's just pick it up and get it out of here. And So we have to make a decision one way or another whether we're gonna use them for garbage or not. Or two, whether we just go ahead and pick them all up and recycle them and get some money back for them. And it looks like, I don't see anywhere in the future where recycling is gonna be worth not only paying for it, but also the regulations of having citizens keeping that recycle from being contaminated. And I think that's the biggest issue with any recycling, because if we even recycle, say, glass only or cardboard only, maybe we could do that at equal or maybe a little bit of expense. But if people continue to contaminate those, then that does not make it cost effective. It doubles or triples the price. So, and it seems like the evidence we've had the last several years that contamination is the biggest problem besides the cost. So I think we need to do something with these carts, either get rid of them, store them, or charge people if they want to use them for garbage, one or the other.
David, did you look in at all to what sort of space would be required for storing those?
In speaking with Robert, he believes that if we take the wheels off of them to where we can stack them high, that we've got enough space out at Pine Acres to put them out there. My thought on it is that if it doesn't look like we're going to use them, let's just get rid of them. Recycling them, maybe we can get a few dollars for them back, because it's hard plastic, so we might be able to
Right.
get something
Can
back on it.
recycle our recycle bins.
Well,
At least they won't be contaminated.
Well, you know what, if people, I wouldn't, I'd like to turn mine back in, but maybe if you gave $1 off of everyone's utility bill, if we wash them for you and they get picked up and they're nice and clean, that'll save a lot of time for staff to have to do that.
I think we're going to have to clean them and sterilize them
Well,
anyway.
You can't make people.
It's a
If
good
you're gonna
point
get
of
rid
the giving money back. So, did the citizens not pay for these cans?
No.
The city paid for them.
It
Well,
came
the
out of-
citizens did through taxes.
Yeah, through tax, yeah.
Right, but we didn't charge them special for
No.
these cans.
No.
And we're sure of that.
The only ones that got charged for the recycling carts were the commercial properties, because it wasn't a free service provided to them.
Got it.
Thought
Okay.
about trying to sell them to somebody?
That's what I was thinking for scrap plastic, just to,
Or even
Well,
to
that may
another
be-
city.
Might
Yeah,
be
but
another
the
city
lids
who's
have our
starting
name
up
on
a recycling
Right.
program.
Why don't you just take the lid off and get a new lid?
yeah, they do have our name stamped on them.
Yeah.
Maybe we could sell them back to the company that sold us and they could reuse them for another city.
We could look into it.
We have a question. Miss Anne Marie, who lives at?
Anna Marie Feeney, 234 East Camphor Street, Avon Park. As far as the recycle cans go, I am tired of that blue and yellow can sitting in my driveway. And the fact of the matter is it's in pretty good shape. Now, I think they should all be recycled except you have places like the football field, which is city property, when people hold events.
We'd keep some of them.
Right. In other words, keep the best that you have. That way you can identify why they're there. You know, after Vet Jam, you're going to see 10 of those blue and yellow cans. You know they came from Vet Jam. You're going to know that you're going to store them. You're going to keep them. I mean, I miss the recycling program because I really do believe in recycling. But on the same token, if we're not going to use the cans, people are just leaving them out in the street anyway.
Yeah.
And it's kind of becoming an eyesore.
Well, it's a code enforcement violation.
I know. I know.
Addressing.
But, you know, people turn around, they double up on their garbage. Now, I've got a family that has 5, 6 kids. You know they've got diapers. So they're going to use whatever receptacle they can get their hands on to make sure that the garbage gets out. I think family dwellings ought to have really actually more garbage cans than just one. I mean, especially apartment buildings and things like that that have children, families, real families in them, should have more garbage receptacles. But the recycling cans, yeah, they could go bye-bye and just keep them for city use. Keep some for city use, you know, the events, the ballparks,
We would.
things like that.
Yeah.
But what will we do with the recycle then?
It's never coming back, ever?
I mean, if they're recycled at a ball game?
No, not recycle, just to use them as a garbage can.
I got you. Thank
So
you
they
for-
can be
thank you for
identified
that.
as garbage cans
Yep.
at municipal garbage
Yep,
cans.
perfect. Okay.
So we'll have 10,000 garbage cans, recycle bins. We can keep 100.
Yes, we can keep 100.
Yeah.
Or-
Of
I
the
think-
best.
I think we have roughly 4,000,
Yeah,
4,500.
we got about
Maybe less than that.
4,000.
Yeah, I know.
10,000, 11,000 citizens, but,
Households.
yeah.
Thank you.
So do you want to make a decision on this tonight, or you guys want to still?
Stanley? you have
I'll
something?
make a motion that we pick them up.
Okay.
I second that motion.
We have a motion and a second that we pick up all the recycling bins.
Okay, you realize that this is going to be kind of an event, that we're going to have to advertise to let people know that we're going to be picking them up between such and such a date and this date.
Yeah.
Probably going to be in March.
Yep.
And it's going to be something that we can't get done in a couple of days.
Yeah,
Right.
and people have relied on them. So I mean, you can put it on the utility bill that
Yes.
it's coming, or maybe
We'll-
slap a
we'll-
piece
we'll
of paper
advertise
on
it
them when
in all of
people.
our avenues that we can.
Put
Right.
it out there on a sign like we did for the water
We
break.
can do that
Right
too.
there on the mall. Pick up cans such and such a time.
There was a mention of possibly giving out some sort of a credit if they clean the containers.
If they clean them up, but
Yeah.
that's up
We're
to.
going to have to do it anyway.
Yeah,
Right.
I think it will.
Yeah.
Well, I'm going to clean mine. Okay.
Thank you.
But, we do appreciate that. You
Yeah.
take the wheels off of it too.
I'll give
I'll
you-
do that if you want.
I'll
me
give
to.
you $1 to clean mine.
Huh?
I'll give you $1 to clean mine.
Anyone else?
I can assure you mine is spotless. I believe it
You
might have
never
never
used
been
yours, did you, Mayor?
Never been used. Huh?
You can stick a note on the black can after they empty them out.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
If that's
Now-
the direction we're taking.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Is there any other questions?
I just want to make sure that recycling's never coming back, that we're not going to go through this exercise again in 2 years where we have to give them back
Yeah.
out again.
Well, in my research of the global situation of recycling, basically this entire thing is fueled by China. China has come out with legislation that they do not want to take the world's garbage anymore. So they're trying to clean up all of the garbage in China, and that's causing a worldwide change because everything from around the world basically went to China.
Or the big weir in the South, in the Pacific.
A lot of it ended up in the ocean, yes. But that's what was driving the value of all this recycling.
But not
That's-
even glass? I mean, not even glass.
Well, there's some American producers of glass
Yeah.
that do it, but I mean, you're talking about trying to handpick. The glory days of this sole stream that we had is probably never going to return.
Okay,
And if it does, it's going to be quite a while. So,
okay.
anyway,
Where are you going to store them?
Until we can find a way to get rid of them, they're going to be at Pine Acres with the wheels off of them where we can stack them.
Will it be, Pine Acres is over here in one of the neighborhoods, right?
The old hospital, back behind the old hospital.
It's not going to be an eyesore to the residents in that
They're going
area?
to be inside a building.
We have a building that big to store all those?
We have a pretty good sized building out there, but
What's in there now?
Christmas ornaments.
he's going to work very fast to find a home for these before it gets
Yeah,
there.
I just don't want them to be an eyesore or that thing that collect water and end up having
I
mosquitoes and,
Completely agree.
okay.
All right, is there any further questions, comments? Seeing none, we'll call the roll.
Councilman Spurlock,
Yes.
Councilwoman Sutherland,
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Barnard,
Yes.
Mayor Anderson,
Yes.
motion passed.
Thank you. City manager report, Avon Park website.
Okay, you've probably seen in the newspaper recently that the city of Sebring and Highlands County both have had to go through with taking off items from their website because of some ADA restrictions. In your packet was a letter that was given to us from Roper and Roper public attorneys concerning the ADA website accessibility and PDF document conversion. Basically, what it boils down to is that some of these documents cannot be read by the blind people that have these devices on their computers to where they can actually see what's on there or hear what's on the websites. So because of that, it has created a bunch of, shall I say, nuisance lawsuits where they've gone to municipalities where they didn't have that ability, and they sued them and they settled for $10,000 to $20,000, and just to make them go away, basically, because it wasn't worth going through the court process on this. Until the technology gets to where we can have these items to where we can make our television stuff where it's got closed caption on it already, and we can make our documents on the website to where they're completely ADA compliant. The recommendation from Roper and Roper attorneys was just to take down off of anything that has an attachment that's in PDF. And basically, all of our documents are in PDF, because if it's a Word document, anybody can change it. So we don't want that to happen. So
Even the
that's-
website itself, though, I mean,
Yeah, well, here's my thing. This is an IT problem that I think could be easily solved. Yes, someone can change a Word document, but they cannot change it on the source. So if they want to change it at home, I can change a PDF on my computer all day long. So what's stopping me from changing it right now? Nothing.
Okay.
So we need to, go ahead.
Well, the problem here, though, is the
Not
fact that
everybody has what you
it's
have.
not ADA compliant, and the documents can't be pulled up by their equipment.
No, I understand that. I'm
Okay.
just simply saying the issue with why we can't just simply reformat it into a different format that is ADA compliant is that that someone at home may be able to change it. That's a non-issue for me, at least.
It might not be available, is what I think I understand.
It is available.
yeah, but not everyone's going to have the money, the capacity to do what you do.
No. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying we're looking for a way
Oh,
to change these PDFs into a format that they can read, so that way we can publish things online again. Because right now we can't publish anything because we're used to publishing them in PDF.
mhm.
We just need an IT person to simply change the format to one of the acceptable formats that's spelled out in the letter, and we're good to go.
Well, unless you can get it done right away, as in immediately, my recommendation is that you pull the stuff until you have
Yeah.
it. You have the IT.
They've already pulled it, have you not?
Yeah.
Okay.
We've started. We've
Yeah.
started. We have tons of documents on there that we have to do this with.
Got it.
So how does this affect, for example, I mean, public records, you know, without an agenda, without a special notice, the only thing you have is a bulletin board downstairs. Are we going to start advertising in the newspaper or the radio? That covers two angles right there.
As far as the agenda,
Agendas or packets, or are we having a meeting? I
we can
mean,
put public notices on our website like we do now.
we
just
can
don't-
still do that.
Yes, and
You-
we may put the basic
Page
heading
one.
Yeah.
of the agenda, but no attachments.
Right.
But that's a PDF.
No, it doesn't have to
It
be.
doesn't have to be.
It can be just a page on your website, as like any other page on your website. And then it can say on there, for the backup documents, contact City Hall.
But if they can't read it,
But it's being read by their equipment,
okay.
because the equipment basically reads through what's on the page. And I think what the mayor's saying is they can do that with Word documents as well, but we don't know that right off the bat. But it can't do with PDFs. And it's because of the security aspect, I think, with the PDFs. But nevertheless, if you put on there, for the backup information, contact City Hall, then they can send it to them. Yeah, that's so.
Yeah, I mean, you know, in the interim, I understand doing what you have to do. It's just not a long-term solution.
Right. Well, we definitely need a long-term solution.
Right.
But right now, I think what they're saying is that they're tired of paying, damages for these lawsuits where they're not ADA compliant, and so they're fixing that situation right now.
Well, what about videos then? I mean, right now it's being televised. Are we, we no longer televise it because we don't have someone here with sign language?
I don't know that that's specifically been addressed, but I think it would probably become an issue in the near future because it's not closed captioned.
But the website brings in from YouTube. Why can't these things just stay on YouTube, and therefore we don't have any handle on the audio, video portions of our meetings? I mean, can't they just remain on YouTube? We can post them there? Or is that gonna be a government link that we're gonna have to have compliant as well?
I think that's an ADA expert question.
Yeah.
I just hate to see that the public record aspect
agree.
of things, which means that if you can't save it in an audio video, then you better be taking verbatim minutes. Because oftentimes, there's the sentiment of a motion, or not the sentiment, but, how we decide things
Context
sometimes,
around
yeah,
it.
is lost.
Well, I'll just say that the law the Sunshine Act does not require verbatim minutes.
Agreed.
It requires that you have the primary issues like votes on ordinances and resolutions and votes in general, and that's all taken by hand. Most cities take it by hand, even though they're recording it, just in case the recording equipment doesn't work. But it's not required.
I'll give the example of the generator. Had it not been for the audio video of the generator's subject being discussed at certain intervals, then we would not have gotten to the truth of that issue. The minutes never
I
reflected it.
agree, it's absolutely a great idea to have it. I'm just simply saying it's
So
not.
could we
not-
have it just for ourselves, or does that mean that that it becomes a public record, right?
It is a public record.
So then then what do we do? I like the idea of having audio video.
Well, you just don't need to post it on your,
So on the
website.
agenda itself, there's this little thing at the bottom that says that any person with disabilities requiring accommodations in order to participate should contact the city manager prior to the meeting. Should that be changed also?
No, I think that's straight out of the statute.
So,
What about on the next to last page where it has these names of these 3 locations? Are those organizations that could help us do that? The Sonoma County Web Accessibility, WebAIM, and
I think it's directing their IT person. I don't think that they're gonna do it for you necessarily.
but this would give information for
Yeah.
IT to convert our
Right.
stuff.
Right.
But is that
and our
a-
IT person can't do this?
And not all can.
It's gonna require, he's what, $75 an hour? You're gonna have to hire somebody else to do this?
And you're also gonna need some
It's a
ADA
lot of stuff.
But it has to
expertise
be
as well.
everything, right? It can't be just the agendas each week.
All of the records.
Even the
that we got
budget,
on
so when we do budget, how is that gonna work?
That's a lot of money.
We can probably.
I mean, it's hard enough to read it. Imagine
Right.
trying to
We can
translate that.
probably do a summation page on the budget. That's something that I was speaking with the county administrator that has a 600-page budget. So they were looking into the possibility of doing that. So we can find out more. If you do a summation, a 2 or 3 page summation, it might suffice for that.
So their solutions was in-house staff or what?
Whose solution?
The county and city of Sebring?
Their
Have you-
solution right now was just to take everything off.
Yeah.
And
They haven't started to rectify the situation at all?
no,
No.
they just
Okay.
took everything down.
So the webpage itself that says, City of Avon Park has a little skeleton of the dinosaur on that, all that can stay.
Mhm.
Your little notice that says city council meeting coming up on X date, that can stay.
Yep.
I just don't understand why those things can stay, but PDFs can't. You're saying that there's voice prompt that comes off of a webpage?
Yeah, is there not?
I'm not an expert in it. I'm just simply, I sent out a similar notice back in June, but I wasn't representing you then.
Bobby, do you have that?
I would like to say something about it.
Please come forward, Bobby.
My name is Robert Talley, and I live 319 South Verona here in Avon Park. Y'all talking about thing to put for handicapped people to listen to the city council. And there is a way to do that. It costs lots of money to do it. JAWS, that is a voice that you get on the computer. You got to buy that, about $1,000 or so. And got some more things like that for handicapped people can listen to. And got lots, I don't remember all of it, all the JAWS and things like that, but I used to have them. I don't, and you can put it on your computer, and different things like that, and I imagine, I don't know, but I imagine you can get it in Braille. That would be, if for somebody that can read real good in Braille. And that is what you need to look at to see how much it costs. and that would be help out with it with lots of things. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
I guess the question would be if there's a software that does transfer from from the written word into the spoken word, it would have to be the most basic thing that would cover the different levels of costs that individuals like Bobby might have. I mean, he's talking about $1,000 program that he would have to buy in order to be able to listen to this. Is there a more universal lower cost that the city would have to be compatible with, obviously, but...
Do I need to give my name and address? I don't live in Avon Park.
Well,
That's fine.
Okay, I'm with Bobby. I'm his aide. And yes, there are programs out there that can be downloaded that can read your documents to him.
Right.
There are some that are cheaper. There are some that are more expensive. But the
According-
majority of them can be done.
But when you go to do that, are there certain, I don't know how to explain this. There's higher technology and lower level technology. I'm looking at something that would be more universal for people that are in his position. Are all of them accessible with the type of software that you're familiar with? Every type of technology, because we're
I've
going to
only have experience with two. And basically they were on a tablet for another blind individual or visually impaired, and it read to them. My best friend also has one that reads off her computer. I don't exactly know what they cost or where they come from, but they are picky about what it reads.
I got a reader at home, and anybody can come and see it if they want to. You can put a book on it, and it will read it to you.
And there are readers just like that on the websites. When
Right.
I have my business website designed, she made it where it was readable by these programs.
According to this, it has to be an HTML, which is website standard page, RTF, which is some of my documents are in RTF, but I've never heard of PDF-A is the other one. It's a modified version of PDF.
The converters for documents to this format, I'm sure the IT would easily be able to figure it out.
The thing I got at home is called the Smart Reader.
Okay.
And it costs a lot. And you can put a book on it, a paper on it, it will read it to you.
Okay. Thank you very much.
So it sounds to me like it's the party that needs to hear this would have to have the equipment.
And their home.
Not necessarily us putting something on our side that automatically would give it to them.
No,
We
you
just
have
have to
you
have
have
the-
to put it in a format
Right.
that what they purchase
Right.
will read. That's the problem, the format you're in now
Can't be read.
can't be
any-
read
any
on
of
that
those
document,
machines.
and it can't be read at all. So that's what they're doing now, is they're modifying to format the things that have to be on there. Certain things that have to be on your website,
But you
like the
convert,
budgets and so on.
Hotmail should be an easy conversion, shouldn't it? If that's not HTML, it's Hotmail.
Jerry,
All websites are in the basic format, and I'm speaking way out of my league here.
Me too.
HTML.
does this
is-
apply? Does this apply to public records? If someone with a visually impaired wants to read emails that are public records, are we going to have to transfer those emails into this format as well?
Yeah, I think so.
Gee whiz.
I think that's really what the issue is. Maybe we need to wait to see what the county does.
Yeah, but in the meantime,
In the meantime, you need to remove it, like
Yeah.
like they're doing
Yeah.
now.
Yep.
which brings me to my next question. If we have many citizens that want to know what's going on with the city's agenda, can we just have on the side just a massive email list where we can just email them the agenda or the packet if we wanted to, or
Not if it's in PDF. You have the same problem. Because you're providing it. It's about unequal treatment.
okay, but what if those individuals request that they want to be put on it? If Galen Thomas, for example, says, I want all the agendas. A packet. She wants a packet because she can't get a packet unless she comes to City Hall.
And it doesn't show up on
Yeah.
Then David can't stop from saying, no, you can't have one.
No,
So-
of course not. But if somebody says, I need a special accommodation associated with that, then he'll have to put it in one of those other formats
Right.
that's readable and send it to him in that way. You can't just send out a PDF to everybody.
So that can happen right now.
Yeah. That's why we have that provision on there that says if you require special accommodations, please make that request.
So right now, if there's no special accommodations, yes, to answer your question, we can do it in like a blast email when we send them out. I've already told the members of the press that when we send out the council packets to y'all, that we would include them as well on that. And I would assume anybody else in the public that wants to be added to that list, we could make a list on that.
So just,
Doesn't cost anything to
I don't
do
know
that.
how broad or who's looked into this already, but what would happen if you had, when you print up your packet, could you just not have one at City Hall that is in Braille or some format where they can come to City Hall and listen to it there? Or do you have to create it in case someone calls from Vancouver? I mean, is it not enough to have it at City Hall?
Well, then
So
you're
that
al-
the handicapped person can come to City Hall and read it there?
Well, then you're also requiring a blind person to drive to City Hall every week to pick
Oh,
up.
he-
I mean, not everybody has that access on a.
Yeah,
by
Yeah,
think you
I
have
mean,
to
I get that,
convert
I
it.
just didn't know if there was.
Or
a-
charge, I
Right.
mean, they have to do something that we don't have to do.
Okay.
That's
So your
the issue.
reporter wanted to say something.
Barry, do you have something?
Barry Foster, News Director, Highlands Radio Group in Sebring. Sorry. I've done some research into this. A PDF file is just a picture of a document. And a reader can't read that. It's a picture, so it doesn't read that. You have to have somebody who data enters that. Emails are not PDF files. EDF are easily read. The person that contacted the county is from Daytona Beach. The person that contacted the city of Sebring is from Miami. The person who contacted the county has visual issues. The people who contacted city of Sebring has auditory issues. But the problem is that they're special readers, like Bobby has, does not read that. And your attorney's exactly right. If they provide a blast email, this guy from Daytona Beach is going to say, I want one. And his reader's not going to be able to read it. You have the same problem.
Mhm.
Sadly, I hate to say this, it's from the if we can't have it, nobody can have it department.
Right.
And that's just basically what it is. And you are, I would suggest that Joy Carmichael, this county's attorney, is working on this. And I know David's probably been talking to her, Mr. Flowers been probably talking to her. But this is a sticky issue. At one point, the county did make an entire agenda in Braille, which no one looked at. But they did have it done. It's a very tough issue because the ADA makes it very difficult. And I've done some research into this, and trying to convert a PDF file to a readable file is a daunting task. You ask why the picture of the skeleton can stay? Because when you enter that in, I know something about search engine optimization. When you put that picture up there, there's copy that says, this is a picture of a dinosaur skeleton. When your Facebook doesn't work, sometimes you'll see a picture that says, may contain 3 people and a dog. I mean, it'll tell you what the picture is of. And they can read that, even though they can't see it. But a picture of a PDF doesn't say anything. And then, so you've got 200, 300, 400 pages of PDFs, which they can't read. And I think nuisance lawsuits, I don't know whether it was Mr. Flowers, Mr. Buer used the term, but I think that's what you're looking at until the cities can find 1,000 monkeys with 1,000 keyboards to begin to just, I think that the county has been asked for all of their records from 2016, 2017, 2018, and to date in 2019. That was the request. I'm just saying. And they want it done, as they said, Mr. Buer said, right now. And if they don't, of course, then you've got this, we'll pay you to go away suit. But then, as my wife has pointed out, that doesn't stop the next guy from coming along and saying, hey, pay me to go away too, would you?
Yep.
It's a very tough decision. And So I don't have a solution for you, but I can tell you that is the issue that you're dealing with right now,
Yeah.
sadly.
I don't think there's a solution for us tonight either.
No.
I think we just have to,
Sounds like we're on the right track.
Yeah.
We just have to wait and see what comes of it.
that's why we have a board certified attorney next to it.
There you go.
All right. Is there anything else on the website?
Yes, oh, no, not on the website.
All right. The
Okay.
monthly report. Go ahead.
Well, I'm not going to read all the monthly report to you. I submitted it to you.
Okay.
I apologize. We were not able to get the utilities billing and some of the code enforcement stuff because we didn't have an internet most of the day on Friday when I was trying to put all this stuff together, so I couldn't get it all out to you.
Wonderful.
Yeah. I'm going to skip right down to the bottom of my updates. New hours for City Hall are working fine. The Martin Luther King Plaza water leak and flooring, we've got 2 bids in. This is a rubberized floor. Doesn't that look pretty though?
Does.
Yeah.
Is it going to come in little squares like that?
No,
No.
it comes in sheets.
Just asking.
Yeah. So we are exploring those options right now to see what's going to be the best way to go. Waiting on another bid. Our HR manager is on board, Brenda Dane. Started a week ago. She hit the ground running. She's doing really good. I think a few of you have already met her. I would encourage you to just drop by and meet her so you can see who I'm talking about. But I'm very pleased with the progress that she's making already. She's doing some good things for us. CRA update. I know we were supposed to have a CRA meeting tonight before this meeting. That's
What
gonna
for? What was on it?
You wanted me to have a staff person assigned to it. So
I didn't know that we needed a meeting. I mean, there's nothing to, I don't know if you have other things to discuss on CRA. I didn't know that you were going to
you
hire someone just for that, for tonight.
Well, that was the direction you gave me last week.
We want
What
go
I
ahead.
did, since they have a meeting coming up next Monday anyway,
You say they.
the advisory board,
Oh, okay.
Main Street,
Okay.
and she's gone. Okay. Since they have a meeting anyway next week, we can discuss those things, and then on the meeting on the 25th, we can bring it back to you for a 5:30 meeting before the 6 o'clock meeting. That's just my update on that, on why I did what I did.
Okay. Do we have a report from was it LaRue or?
That's part of this.
Okay.
I had a question in part of your report on the recreation building. Has the money been designated for any particular use at this point? Because remember, the Boys and Girls Club talked about bringing in some other expenses and things that could be used with the insurance money.
Very minor expenses. They want to put like a draw curtain to kind of separate the basketball court and the half court to where they can do some instructional things in there. They want to put a computer lab in there, and it's not like the draw curtain is only $600. That's really.
Well, the reason why I ask is because with our new contract that we have with those entities out there, there are still some open areas on the field that have access for anyone just to walk in. Here we're having these contracts and the place is supposed to be locked up. There needs to be a gate.
Dave and I discussed that this morning, as a matter of fact, and I said, put the new locks on it, do what you got to do.
But no, they need a new gate. There's a section of fence that doesn't exist between the westernmost part of the building and the football field.
Excuse me.
Bless.
You've got two barriers. You've got the rec center itself wall, and then you have the fence of the football field, and there's nothing in between, and cars sometimes go right through there, and they have access through the retention pond onto the soccer field.
If we can't lock the field up, then we will make it to where we can.
That's that needs to be locked up.
Because we had some Sunday afternoon soccer players in there, and they messed the field up and left a mess. So that's what Dave and I were discussing this morning. Let's fix it. Whatever we got to do to fix it, we're going to fix
You
it.
have to close off the field completely.
Close it off, change the locks, put new locks and chains, whatever.
No
So-
trespassing signs, you need those.
Yep.
Otherwise, you can't trespass them.
Yep.
And in regards to the fields and the locking them up and stuff, do you know anything in regards to the removal of those portables? The little old portable buildings?
The last I was told was the lady with the Heart and Lions had someone that was going to take them away.
Did we ever get ownership squared away on those?
Yes.
We did.
We did.
Yeah, John McClure wrote a letter.
I have a legal letter from John McClure
Yeah.
that says basically do
Took
with it
one
what you
phone
want.
Well, then I would suggest getting with the woman from Heartland Lions
Yeah.
and seeing.
And then the last thing I wanted to bring up in regards to this also, I know that this kind of tangents off a little bit, but it's essential to speak about it. Have we completed or ordered, weren't there monies from RPAC for Donaldson Park to buy playground equipment? Isn't there a contract with the county?
Yes, we still have an agreement between them. That's
When does that expire?
2021.
And we
I'd have
can't
to look
apply
at
for
it
any
again.
other RPAC dollars until that's complete?
I'm not sure. I can ask.
And here's a question why. If we have money at the rec center to the tune of about $75,000, we can use that for leverage for any other park in the city, and we can get dollars from RPAC for that. But if the Donaldson Park project isn't complete, then we can't leverage that money. I would like to see that if we're going to put this flooring inside the building, that we save the rest of that money and use that for leverage for other things, whether it be more flooring or something else to go into the infrastructure of the rec building or pavilions or whatnot. But we have a golden opportunity here to get 50% of that rec money and apply that another 50% elsewhere, or maybe even more, because from what I remember, RPAC has never said no. And Avon Park has not submitted since the Donaldson Park project. But if that has to get done first, then we need an extension or see whether or not we can save that money until we can leverage that with with RPAC. I just think it's a golden opportunity to get at least $30,000 to $40,000 more dollars.
I don't disagree.
But anyway, I'd be more than happy to help you with that. I know that Danielle sits on that board, and Park Sutherland sits on that board as well, and he'd be more than happy to pitch whatever you have going on that board.
You have a contact with him?
I do, yeah, I do. But anyway, I just want to use that money most efficiently as we can, because there's no other money for infrastructure for parks that I saw in the budget, because we didn't get the 2 FERDAP grants that were budgeted and they were never applied for. So we need to, revamp those parks.
David, do you have anything else?
No, sir, I do not.
That concludes our regularly scheduled agenda. Is there anything else for the good of the city? Seeing nothing, I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Seeing no opposition, we are adjourned.
Woo!